All in favor? Carried. All right, public question period. Were there any questions submitted, Madam Clerk?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor, there were no questions submitted.
Okay. All right, so the next item on the agenda is the public presentation section, and the grant funding applicants are listed there. But as I mentioned at the outset of the meeting, we're going to proceed with as much of the regular agenda as we can until 7:30, and then we'll entertain those presentations. So that moves us into council inquiries. Are there any inquiries from any member of council? Okay, so on to the first item on the agenda. We have a report from SBA dealing with the water pollution control plan. So Steve and team.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council. At this point, I believe that council has been provided with a copy of the SBA 2020-05 report. So if it's okay with council, I know we'd had some trouble with people hearing and videos cutting in and out. So if it's okay, I'll maybe just talk through it. If council would like, I do have the report available to put any portions of it up if we need to in our discussion. So the purpose of this report was to come back to council. As I think was alluded to earlier, there was some discussions about the Class EA and the process and where we were at. And at my last council meeting, I did commit to coming back to council with updated costs based on where the current Class EA for water treatment plant sits at. So this is really just a report for council to receive and have that information for it. As a background, and I won't, obviously it was a fairly lengthy report, so I won't go through every single section, but just as a background, as council's aware, we are moving through Class C environmental assessment for the wastewater treatment plant. That plant, or that process, sorry, has 5 phases to it, which really we're nearing the end of phase 3, which is coming to the preferred design alternative solution so that we can actually finalize the environmental study report and move forward with the implementation of the recommended preferred solution. Just as a reminder to council, and as noted in the report, this report horizon is a 20-year horizon. So we're looking out to the year 2041, and it has been based on the upper set limit of the projections or population projections for the town, which is 15,000 people. And that does include both what's referred to as the urban boundary or the current boundary, as well as the urban expansion area, which we have referred to as stage 4 and would ultimately be the lands out to 4th line of Melanchthon. I think council's already seen these numbers before, but the updated projections for that increased capacity is 5,100 cubic meters per day that would be required for sewage treatment, as compared to the 3,420 cubic meters per day that the existing plant is currently designed to handle. As council will recall, earlier this year, we did come back to the public and through both council as well as a public information center that identified the preferred solution to expanding, or the preferred planning solution was expanding the existing wastewater treatment plant. And that was presented in June of this year. As council probably also is aware, concurrently with the MEA process, we did go through in a simulated capacity study, and that study was ultimately accepted by the Ministry of the Environment on April 30th, 2020 for that upsized 5,100 cubic meters per day average flow rate. As alluded to previously, and as part of the analysis, the costing has significantly increased since numbers were originally presented about 2.5 years ago. The original numbers, as council may recall, were in the $11 to $14 million range, which was specifically for improvements or upgrades to the plant. And costing now is showing for the three options that has been narrowed to be fair, there were several technologies, several options that were explored, but it has been narrowed down to the do nothing option, which really entails the cost of upgrades to the existing facility to meet all of the regulations, requirements, etc., moving forward with the same capacity, which is in the range of 18.8 to 14.9 million. Upgrading with extended aeration, which is the current technology within the wastewater plant. A capital cost all inclusive of 29.2 to 32.7, or upgrading to membrane bioreactors, which would be a newer technology and replace the extended aeration technology at a capital cost of 25.4 million to 26.9. Now, given these extensive or significant increases in cost, we felt it was diligent and required going through where the difference is and how that has come about. And just so council is aware, SBA has been working collaboratively with Aqua, and both Karen and Don are on the line with us this evening as well as town staff through this process, just if there are any questions that I can't answer. As we move through that process of determining the hydraulic and process capacity of the existing plant, there were some serious bottlenecks and shortcomings identified with the existing plant, which had not been originally anticipated in those first numbers. These are really items that require repair, replacement, or upgrading for the existing facility to meet operational, regulatory, and optimization levels. So what we really broke this down into, and I appreciate that council has had an opportunity to tour the facility, but really the sewage treatment plant facility is made up of multiple processes, one stage leading to the next stage. So we really broke it down into each of those to try and explain for everyone what has changed or what has been identified, and then what would be requirement moving forward into the larger facility. So the headworks of the plant is that initial piece where it comes into, the sewage comes into the facility. This has had several operational challenges for Aqua in the past, and has had several repairs and is in need of repairs both under the do nothing as well as the expanded option. The aeration, generally, the aeration components are properly sized. This is really the heart or the treatment of the existing plant. That is generally sized sufficiently for the existing flows, and essentially would have to be doubled in capacity for future flows. The clarification is the next process. This has actually been identified as an issue and has shown up on a few occasions. This is actually the component that failed last year, caused some significant issues at the plant, and also was a major component associated with some of the odors that were experienced at the plant in last year's when that issue happened. The clarifiers are significantly undersized for the existing plant, and Aqua staff have also been dealing with some operational issues there, where there had to be some rewelding of gears, pieces that have come apart, and Aqua's had to move forward just to deal with those issues in the past few months. Excuse me. The tertiary filtration, this was something that was upgraded a few years back and has fully, and therefore is meeting all requirements under the do nothing approach. The disinfection is really one of the last processes for the liquid treatment through the sewage treatment plant. And ultimately, the sewage treatment plant uses UV for that disinfection step. It is an obsolete piece of equipment now. The manufacturer is no longer supporting that equipment. So that would actually have to be changed both for a do nothing as well as an upgraded facility. One of the major bottlenecks that was determined through this assessment, excuse me, was the solids treatment and storage. So basically this entails the digesters, aeration, and the sludge storage facility. So that's really that large blue tank, above ground tank that everyone would have seen on any of the tours. Part of this, we believe, could have been part of the regulatory issue that changed. Storage was actually changed from 180 to 240 days. So this equipment is undersized. This is a situation where Aqua has had to come up with alternative solutions and have diligently done so, of having other lagoons and other storage facilities available in order for the plant to get through the winter. But in order to meet those regulatory requirements, there is a significant upgrade needed for that portion of the system. And then before we go into costing, and I know I alluded to this sort of just in our discussions with council at the last discussion on this item, but did not have absolute numbers. But we have experienced an extreme increase in construction pricing over the last 2 to 3 years. This is something in my career that I haven't seen since 2000 to 2002, which was actually tragically due to the Walkerton tragedy that did happen, resulted in significant investment into infrastructure, into municipal systems. We're seeing a very similar increase due to all levels of government and private sector actually investing in infrastructure at this time. So in recent tender closes over the last 2 years, we have seen price increases in the 25 to 30% range for each of the last 2 years, as compared to our typical 4 to 6% that we would normally carry for construction increases annually. And just so council is aware, the construction numbers do generally run slightly higher than the consumer's pricing index, just due to influence from fuel, diesel, plastics, some of the tariffs and different things that affect construction pricing through the states as well. So moving forward into the presentation, and there was a table number 1 that was presented as part of the package. That table lays out those do nothing costing. As council can see, it was actually broken down into the headworks, no cost change for the aeration, about 2.5 million associated with the secondary clarifiers. And just so council's aware, that was an item that continually kind of came up on Aqua's list, and also was, I think, earmarked on previous council information. The ultraviolet or disinfection would require upgrading as discussed. And then the lion's share of the do nothing costs rest really with that solids treatment, pumping and digestion. So the total cost has been identified at approximately 11.8 million, inclusive of normal non-construction and engineering related percentages. We also worked with Aqua, and we have shown a table for this. This was really different things over the years that Aqua would normally either add to the annual capital list or would deal with on a step-by-step basis. Very similar to how the gears on the clarifiers had to be re-welded and things like that. So that list has been put forward. Near the beginning of the EA, it was agreed, instead of Aqua kind of pushing an annual list and SBA working forward on an upgrade list, that we would really come together and make sure nothing fell through the cracks, and we would include that all together. So there is approximately 2.5 or just under 2.5, I believe our team rounded that up, associated with some of these health and safety issues, improvements within the plant, and different things that could be dealt with that way. So this gives us a range of, if we were to do nothing and not move forward with an expansion, just to take the existing plant up to the current regulatory operational and optimization levels that would be proposed, we would be in that 11.8 to 14.9 million. Now, so that council is aware, portions of that would be dealt with during an upgrade. So we couldn't really say this is strictly the cost for the do nothing, this is the upgrade. So the upgrade costs include all of this, because some of those items would not be required if we move forward with the full upgrade. Another item that came up as we were moving through this detailed assessment and detailed processing was that Aqua actually changed the way that they were monitoring the incoming or peak flows in 2019. After going through the data, we fully support and agree with Aqua's decision to make that adjustment. And really what it came down to is the way the flows were previously being recorded. There's actually, as council knows, a storm ponds at the front of the sewage treatment plant. The intent of those storm ponds are to take any of those storm events, rain events that come through. So the way the peak flows were being recorded previously, it was really what the plant was experiencing. So if those flows came in, they were high flows and went up to the pond as equalization or balancing. The flows that came back to the plant were what was recorded. So that worked out to being about a 2.0 or a 2 times peak over and above the average day flow to the plant. When Aqua made the decision to change that and really, as I said, was looking more at what the facility is handling as a peak, the recordings then were based on what comes into both the pond and the facility, and then the plant was being balanced or receiving less flows. So when we got those numbers, the peaking factors were actually closer to 3 times the flows. So we did do back engineering or calculation, went through the last 7 to 10 years of details, reutilizing the information that Aqua provided. And that actually showed consistently that the plant probably has, not the plant, but the facility, including the ponds, has probably been seeing close to 3 times peak, even though the plant itself is diminished and balanced by those storm ponds and only having to process at a 2 times at any given time. The reason that becomes important is it has been a desire of council to remove the storm ponds due to some odor complaints and issues. So we had to then look at balancing options for basically dealing with that higher peak of those storm events that could come through. So when we first went through those calculations, we were envisioning an underground storage, something that could be either of concrete or of that nature. And those numbers came out very cost prohibitive in the 7.5 million range. So we then moved to more an above ground storage tank, very similar to the biosolids tank that's already on site, as a potential alternative for balancing. But just so that council is aware, some of the numbers that I will be presenting to you in the future costing includes about 2.5 million for that balancing tank because of that need to deal with those peak or rainflow events. So moving forward into the options, I've kind of gone through the do nothing, which would be maintaining the existing facility at its current rated capacity of 3420. The 2 technical options that made it through the engineering vetting, made it through the technical vetting, through the operational vetting, came down to maintaining the extended aeration technology, which the current plant is, which is the costing is presented in table 3 for that option, or moving to the newer technology of membrane bioreactors. And that costing is actually presented in table 4. So because I don't need to reread anything, what I'm going to try and do is just summarize the 2 options, do that comparison for for council's benefit, and then we could open it up at that point. So as I said, the headworks requires a significant amount of upgrades, not only for the existing facility, but obviously it would have to be expanded in order to handle the higher or almost double flows. This portion also includes that balancing tank piece to it, in order to be able to deal with those peaking events if we were to remove the storm ponds, which right now provide some of that balancing. And so the total headworks cost for either option is in the 4.1 million range, including that approximately 2.5 for balancing. The treatment technology is relatively similar between the two. Ultimately, there is a bit of a cost advantage to the existing technology of extended air. That doubling of that aeration and doubling of that tankage comes out to about 6.6 million, whereas the MBR technology would actually move up to about 7.3 million for that. So it is about 700,000 more for the membrane technology. But one thing that I have to kind of also let council know is that the membrane technology is a much smaller footprint, would actually fit inside the aeration tanks of the current aeration basin, and then would have a building sort of built over a portion of that. So that's how this has been costed. And that new building could actually house some other equipment that we'll see later on in the solids treatment and storage side. So even though it is a $700,000 premium, it's not quite an apples to apples. It's as close as our team could get, but it's kind of an apples to orange comparison, just because it does include that new building. The secondary clarification is really where the big difference happens here. The membrane technology does not require that process where the extended aeration would. So there is about a $2.5 million difference between the staying with the extended aeration and moving to the membrane technology, just because the membrane technology does not require that, and we could repurpose or decommission those facilities. As I said earlier in the presentation, the disinfection is essentially the same. It requires full replacement under both options. Obviously, it would be much larger under the expanded to handle almost double the flow, but that's basically a wash between the two technologies. The solids treatment and storage, as originally indicated under the do nothing, does require significant upgrades. However, this is again where the existing technology of extended air has a bit higher price at 7.5 million versus the 6 million for the membrane. And again, part of that is some of that technology could be housed in that building that I referred to that would protect the membrane. So if we're looking straight at the construction costs, it is approximately 20.9 million for the extended aeration option and 17.8 million for the membrane bioreactor option. However, we have then added in the aqua list that we had talked about earlier, which would show up potentially on annual reports or making sure we catch everything. You'll see on that list, some of those things are still under review. Some of those things are priority items. Some are items that we may, under a phasing, postpone or shift. But all of the items are there as discussed. We then added the standard 15% for non-construction of permitting, planning, engineering approvals and oversight, as well as a 10% contingency across the board, as standard in our industry for comparing those options. And that's where it gave us total non-construction costs with everything all in of 29.3 for extended aeration and 25.4 for membrane technology. We then went through one more exercise of looking at the balancing tank, if we could make the balancing tank smaller or larger. If the balancing tank was smaller to deal with some of those higher peak flows, other processes within the treatment technology would have to grow to be able to handle those higher peaks. So we did go through that process. It seems like most of the operational folks, most of the engineering folks are landing on a 2.5 design for the plant versus the 3.0 or the 2.0, just because that is a factor of safety and only results in about 3 to 4 days a year where we would exceed that peaking factor. And so when we ran those numbers and did the adjustments in that fashion, that's where we got the top end of the numbers coming out at 32.7 and 26.9 for the membrane. So that's really where the range is provided to council. These costs now have been vetted both by operational and engineering staff, and we have also updated these cost estimates based on recent supplier quotations to support where these numbers are currently coming out. So at this point, as we'd already spoke about, we're nearing the completion of phase 3 of the Class CA, which ultimately has us needing to come forward with a recommendation to council as to what the preferred solution to the problem is. As noted earlier, the costs are significantly higher than originally envisioned. So ultimately, given that this will have a significant financial impact on the town, we needed to bring this report forward and just let council know where we're landing. So I guess before I do any other discussion or go into any other details, I'll maybe just kind of open it up at this point. There may be several questions from council on this, and maybe I'll just open it up at this point.
Councilor Bernardo?
Make sure I'm not muted. Okay. How firm are these numbers?
So through you, Mayor, to Councilor Bernardo, these numbers have definitely been updated at this point. They've been vetted by Aqua staff. They've been vetted by SBA. They have been updated with costing or with supplier quotations. They still are what I would consider a Class C estimate. This is at the end of a study with all the information we have from a study. They have not been done based on anything more than conceptual design. So detailed design could change, but that's why we have added the 10% contingency based on that a Class C should really be plus or minus 10%, Walter.
So in other words, you're not gonna, what I'm getting at is 2 years ago, it was one number and a hell of a lot different than it is right now. I don't expect you to come back in a year from now and say to me, oh, by the way, it's not 29 mil anymore. Now it's 35 mil. You get what I'm getting at? That's why I'm asking, how firm are these numbers? Because we've gone through development charge study, and a lot of this should not be on the back of taxpayers, and we want to make sure it's not there. Second question. There's a hell of, like you said, there's a difference between the aeration and the bioreactors, the membrane bioreactors. With the fact that it's a smaller footprint than what it would be with the aeration, if I heard you correctly, and we're able to put more things into that building, it's almost, and it's cheaper at the end of the day. To me, it's almost a no-brainer. So do we have to keep the current clarifiers we have?
So again, through you, Mayor, to Councilor Bernardo, at this point, we would, if you move to membrane technology, you would not have to have clarification. So you wouldn't need to have that clarification process.
So we can remove all of that?
We could remove all of that. That's part of the reason why the costing of the membrane actually comes out cheaper on this assessment. I'll be honest, I've been doing this for a while, and the membrane technology has never penciled out cheaper than the existing technology if you were comparing a good working order to good working order. So we have had discussions around the technical table that this would either be the last aeration upgrade or the first membrane one, because the technology and the effluent limits are really pushing us towards the membrane technology. And there, although that preferred alternative has not been officially designated by the technical team yet, there definitely is a leaning towards the membrane technology, Councillor Bonanno.
So how expandable is the membrane technology?
So that is actually the advantage of the membrane technology, is that it's very expandable. It could be set up in basically cartridges of membrane technology. It has a much smaller footprint. That said, it is a full conversion from one technology to another. So there are some processes that would positively become obsolete, such as the clarification. There are some other processes that maybe become obsolete or not needed, that it's too bad, or it is switching. But ultimately, this is one of the only studies I've come through where the membrane, because of its usual increased costs, has a significant cost advantage, which is definitely attractive both to the technical team and I'm sure council as well.
And then my final question, the stormwater ponds with the membrane technology, we would be able to use them more for what they're intended to be used for?
So the difficulty with the current plumbing arrangement of the stormwater ponds is they are at the headworks of the plant. So right now what happens is all flows that are above such and such a peaking factor go to the ponds, and that is raw sewage. Right now, what the technical team is looking at is there a possibility of replumbing that so that possibly the ponds could maybe not be fully decommissioned, but that we could flow up to the ponds with a partially treated effluent, so that if there ever was a hiccup in the system, that it goes to the ponds with a treated effluent versus that raw sewage. The other thing is we've spent a lot of time with Aqua really going through these peaking factors, the storm events, the worst storm that we've seen in the last 10 years. And so there is, from a technical perspective, and I realize this maybe isn't as popular with council, there is a perspective of looking at, could one of those ponds still be utilized as a storm pond to maybe not have the 2.5 million in balancing tank, but limit it that it only is used on those events. And as I said, I think we've calculated in the last 7 years, the most that was over a 2.5 event was 4 days in any given year, and most days was only 1 day. Where I think what's happening now, because of the previous design layout, the way settings are, the way the skate is set up, there could be 30, 40 days of a year where raw sewage is sent to those lagoons. So that could be an option as we look forward into the next stage, which is really for us to look at either phasing or first steps sort of possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, just to clarify, and for the benefit of any members of the public that may be watching, I mean, you know, $12 to $15 million seems like an awful lot for a, you know, quote unquote do nothing approach. I mean, you know, that's a bit of a misnomer, I think. So the do nothing approach, you know, essentially means that it just doesn't buy us any additional capacity, right? So it does nothing, you know, as far as additional capacity is concerned, but it is necessary to, you know, affect whatever upgrades are needed to keep the system running as it currently is. Is that a fair assessment?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor, that essentially some of those items are items to come up to regulatory. For example, the 180 to 240 days wouldn't get you any more capacity. Some of those items like the UV are just obsolete equipment that needs updated. Some of those items would fall off the table if the upgrade was done, because it would offset. So as I think was said earlier, a large portion of the upgrade, obviously it would be towards development, would be under the development charges piece. But some of these would have to happen no matter what, just may not be that full amount of what's been presented. That's under the situation of there's no more development, we close the doors. All of these items would have to be done to bring that plant up to regulatory and operational levels.
So at a bare minimum, we're into this for somewhere between 12 and 15 million bucks just to maintain status quo essentially. And as you say, that would mean that we basically close the doors on any future development, which I'm not speaking for everybody, but I don't think is probably the appetite of council. So moving forward to the other two options that are laid out there. And I know we're not at the stage where we're making recommendations, but it seems to be that you would be leaning towards the second option.
Yeah, we actually just had another technical meeting last Friday where we're coming together and really doing final tweaks on any of the operational or annual costs so that we can also present to council a life cycle to this. But it does appear that we are leaning towards option 2 of the membrane technology, and just want to confirm that on a life cycle analysis, because there is some increased potential labor costs for Aqua. There are some increased hydro costs, but it is still penciling out as an equal or cheaper alternative in 30 years based on the life cycle cost.
Okay, so from a budgetary point of view, I mean it's basically double, what we had considered before. So I guess this question would be for a treasurer. Assuming that's the option that the council were to endorse at some future date, how do we pay for that? I mean, I know DCs will go part of the way, but I don't think they'll get us to the goal line, so to speak.
No, we would be relying heavily on DCs as well as any grant opportunities that may be available at the time. We're also hoping that there will be a phased approach to this upgrade of some type. We don't know what that will look like yet. But as far as funding it, long-term borrowing is definitely in our future for this. And we've been telling council this for several years, that this is what our future will look like to fund this project.
Which I think sort of puts a finer point on some previous discussions we've had about making sure that we leave enough room in our debt capacity. Okay, any other questions from council? Oh, Denise? Sorry, there's too many people on the screen now.
Sorry, just to build on what Carrie, our treasurer, mentioned. So we had given you an outline through a number of other reports when we were looking at the debt load related to policing facilities. We certainly will exceed our threshold. We will have to come back to you on what would be the approach that would be taken for either of the other two scenarios that Steve Burnett has outlined with respect to how that would be funded. And I mean, I think staff have been fairly direct in the past with concern with debt load. This would not change with these new costs, but the cost of construction has obviously increased substantially as we expected. And whether or not, to Councillor Bonato's point or question, whether that will change, we don't know, but the trend right now is upward. So this will be a significant long-term cost that will probably be one of the biggest decisions council will be making in your term.
I hate to tell you, Denise, but I've been making this decision on this sewage treatment plant for 22 years. Every time, every 4 years it comes to council, it seems for an expansion.
I think this time it's quite closer to real.
Oh, it's been real for quite a while. Trust me. You should have heard a former mayor speak about the sewage treatment plant. It was quite well quoted in the paper as, what was it, a sea of shit.
I think the one other point that I did want to make with respect to the report is, as noted by both Carrie and Denise, that we have been basically instructed to go back to determining a phasing approach. We will be bringing that forward to council through staff and through another report that has those phasing options. But ultimately at this point, yeah, some of those previous upgrades and some of those expansions really pushed the plant to its limit on some items, and those things now need to be replaced. So.
Okay, any other questions from council? No, okay. So we have a motion in the agenda that reads, be it resolved, council receives a report SBA 2020-05 from Espernet and Associates for information as it pertains to the current water pollution control plant and MEA class EA study and updated estimate capital costs. Mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Fegan. Any further discussion on it? All in favor? Carried. Okay. So I know that it's 7:30 and a number of our community grant applicants are beginning to sign on. I would like to just finish the next two agenda items quickly because our town planner is on the line, and I would like to get through that so that Steve can sign off and be off the clock essentially, but before we move into the others. So item number 2, we need a resolution for the Connecting Link grant funding. Jennifer, did you want to speak to that at all, or?
I can just note that under section 2, it says, as a next step with respect to the Connecting Links funding project, a resolution of council is required in support of Espernet and Associates being awarded the engineering, design, and contract administration work for the project. This is required to be sent into the MTO along with the agreement that was signed.
Okay, so it's just a formality to move that process along. Okay.
That's correct.
Do I have a mover and seconder for the resolution that's contained in the agenda? Moved by Councillor Buffett, seconded by Councillor Bernardo. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, so the next item is a report from our planner dealing with a proposed culvert replacement project. So Steve.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is report number P 2020-15. And the subject of the report is the request by Flato Developments to complete a culvert improvement project on the west side of town at the former rail bed and the Theaker drain, which turns into Walters Creek. So my report provides some of the background with respect to this project request, as well as a couple of options for council to consider. I'd just like to also note that another option available to council, of course, is to defer until you've heard further details about the request from Flato Developments themselves. They have registered as a delegation for the October 19th council meeting. So certainly through their consultants, they may be able to provide additional information that I haven't fully covered tonight. So basically, to recap some of the, sorry, I'm just getting some feedback. If everyone could maybe mute their mic. Okay, it's all right now. Back when there was some preliminary discussion with the previous landowner as well as Flato Developments about the possibility of future development on these lands, it was noted that one of the constraints to development on the land is the fact that a large portion of the central part of the land is within the floodplain of this drain, and that the reason that the floodplain is so broad across these lands is in part due to the undersized culvert that conveys the flows underneath the former rail bed. So Flato Development looked at that and had their engineers, Cole Engineering, undertake a detailed review of the floodplain and the culvert, and have come forward with a proposal to replace the culvert with a twin culvert. So what this would involve is basically cutting the section of the rail bed out, removing the existing culvert, putting twin box culverts in its place, and then restoring the trail and the former rail bed, all within the right of way. The right of way, the property within which the rail bed and the culvert is located, is entirely owned by the county. So obviously the county has been consulted through this request as well. I've got just to illustrate some of the information that I think is helpful to understand the project. I've got a few slides that I'll quickly share just to understand the location and details of the project. Council, see this PowerPoint presentation okay? Okay, so this map is appended to my report, and it just highlights the location of the subject land owned by Flato. These are labeled as phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's kind of the order of development that they would foresee for their land. The blue line, of course, winding through the property here is what's called the Theaker Award Drain. It flows to the culvert here, and then beyond the culvert crossing of the former rail bed, it's known as Walters Creek. And then, so this map is provided by Cole Engineering as part of the reporting for the culvert project. And the other lines that we've shown, we've added just for reference. The town boundary is the yellow line, and the urban area boundary is the red dash line. This map is actually provided by Burnside. Burnside is the drainage engineer of record for the Theaker Drain and Walters Creek. And they are working with the township of Melancthon. Melancthon has had a landowner request some clean out of the drain. We've been advised that this drain, in fact, has never been cleaned out. It was constructed way back in 1919, and that there is an upstream farmer who has some concern with not having an adequate drainage outlet. So this map provided by Burnside just illustrates the drainage area in this black line, shows all of the area drained by the Theaker Drain. So it extends into Melancthon to the north and west, and to the township of Amaranth in the south. And then the balance is within the Shelburne west side area. And again, the direction of flow coming across the culvert and then into Walters Creek. And again, for reference, we've added the town's boundary in yellow and the urban boundary in red. And then this map, there's a lot going on in this map, but to quickly summarize, the key benefit of the proposed culvert project as it relates to the Flato lands and some of the other properties in the area as well, beyond the immediate clean out needs, is that the culvert would convey more water and reduce the extent of the flood line upstream. So this is the former rail bed here on the angled line, and the blue line is the current regional storm floodplain. The red line is what has been modeled as the regional floodplain after the culvert project is completed. So you can see how that frees up additional land on Flato's properties for potential development in the future, and also, reduces some of the floodplain extent on other properties in the area without significantly changing the floodplain downstream. So you can see there's kind of a purple line shown downstream beyond the culvert, but that's just the overlapping red and blue lines because the floodplain is the same before and after when you go downstream according to the model. There's a bit of change immediately east of the culvert, but nothing significant according to the reporting submitted. Just in terms of a quick overhead view of the more localized site plan for the culvert twinning, so that this central area that you see, it kind of looks like a road in the middle. That's just the existing gravel rail bed within the county right of way. This is the south limit, or sorry, I guess it would be the west limit of the rail corridor, and this is the east limit. And then all of this kind of hatched or dashed dotted area in the center, that's the culvert, the double box culvert, concrete culvert that would be constructed in the middle. And then these are retaining walls that would be constructed basically to allow the grading work and so forth to be contained within the right of way. So it's a pretty significant project. I'll just stop sharing the presentation at this point and refer back to my report. You see, we've assessed the costs or identified a summary of some of the costing information that's available to us. The county identified that, if this culvert were replaced outside of what Flato is proposing, it would be a, pretty scaled back version. And it would probably be just replacing the culvert with the same type and maybe deepening it a little bit, which the county indicated would probably be more in the order of a $50,000 project. Whereas what Flato is proposing is much more significant, in the range of 550,000. So we do view that as a development-driven project. Although it aligns with some of the objectives of doing the overall drain clean out, it is primarily development-driven in that the proponent is an owner of land that's seeking to develop the land on the west side. So normally that kind of project would be aligned with some development approvals and addressed through related agreements. Development agreements, say a plan of subdivision and a subdivision agreement are similar. In this case, Flato's just looking to undertake the project in advance of having those types of approvals. So we reviewed that with the county, and the county gave us some feedback on that. The county staff did express some concerns about what could become overbuilt infrastructure that they would have to maintain in perpetuity, and just the timing in relation to the county municipal comprehensive review. But we have also considered that, if the project does not move forward aligned with the drainage work that needs to be completed anyway as part of the Drainage Act improvements, it could result in a situation where the county replaces the culvert for the cheaper project in the near term, say the next year or two, and then 3, 4, 5 years down the road, when Flato does, if they obtain development approvals, have an agreement to build the culvert, that they would then have to replace with essentially a pretty new culvert in that location. So maybe some duplication of work could result, although there's still a lot of unknowns with respect to the timing of both matters. RJ Burnside, as the drainage engineer for the Township of Melancthon, has not identified exactly what the timing would be for the overall drain cleanout, but it's anticipated that will likely happen in 2021. And then the culvert project, what Flato is proposing is basically to get ahead of that, complete the culvert aspect of the overall improvement, put some stone back into the bottom of the culvert until the rest of the drain is lowered. And then when that drain lowering is completed, that stone would come out of the culvert to match the elevation of the bottom of the drain after it's all cleaned out and regraded. So the two primary options that we presented for council consideration would be, the first option would be basically to park this request until there are some related development approvals and Planning Act agreements to address all of the developer responsibilities related to the project. However, the second option, just building again on my comments about the merit of potentially doing this project aligned with the other drain cleanout works, continuing to work with the county to find if there can be a way to do that under a legal agreement between the county and Flato. Just making sure that that agreement covers off, all of the town's roles, responsibilities, and recovery of costs, because normally that would all be addressed, as I say, in a subdivision agreement or development agreement. In this case, we wouldn't have that type of agreement before the project moves forward. So we should have that kind of, town interest addressed through an agreement between the county and Flato. And that would be, between the county and Flato, because the county is the owner of the infrastructure. As I mentioned, there is the other option of, basically deferring direction to staff on this until after you've heard directly from Flato and basically get some more information from their consultants. We did, just as one last item, we did receive correspondence from the Township of Melancthon indicating support for having this culvert replaced. I think that was consistent with what we heard from RJ Burnside, the drainage engineer, as well, is that they would like to see the culvert work done by Flato. Of course, that simplifies the drainage cleanout project that they would otherwise have to undertake. But the two projects do have relationship in that, you know, they do have to clean out the drain to resolve the complaint from upstream in Melanchthon. It's just that the extent of the culvert work is not nearly what is proposed by Flato. It's a much bigger project proposed. So what I'll do is I'll pause there, and if there are any questions of council, I'm happy to try and answer them. And I'm glad Steve stayed on the line as well, because he's had some discussions and input to this as well from the engineering perspective.
Okay. Any questions for Steve or Steve?
I'd like to put forward that we put a motion to support the second option.
Just hold on a second, Councilor Bernardo. Deputy Mayor Anderson, I think, has a question.
Just a few comments, not necessarily questions. And I think I would lean obviously towards what Councilor Bernardo was suggesting, but I was looking at the comments that, and by the way, the letter of endorsement from Melanchthon actually came in from the warden himself. So I think that's important to note. But looking at the comments by the county with respect to this, what was described, I did speak to Scott at the county with respect to this culvert. And I know that he initially described it as, well, if Flato were to move forward with it, it would be Ferrari, and if maybe the county went through with it, it would be more like a Pinto. And I understand the concerns, because he did mention them to me with respect to, well, what if the development doesn't go through, and then the county is sort of left with, whether it's 15 or 20 years down the road, making repairs to a Ferrari when they only really need to make a repair to a Pinto. And so in my discussion with Scott, he was willing to entertain, at least in my discussion, it seemed, and certainly if option 2 is discussed, that will be flushed out in greater detail. But he seemed to have been, how do I put this, less concerned if, for example, Flato decided that they were going to leave, for example, a deposit, for example, that the county could draw upon. So that was something that I think alleviated the concerns of Scott when I spoke to him. It's not necessarily reflected here in the report, but I just wanted to point that out to the rest of council, that in my discussion with Scott, that was the case. The other points that I want to make is regarding to the fact that it's not only, as Steve pointed out, benefiting the development for Flato, which is obvious, but it's also benefiting other landowners that are in that area as well. And lastly, and I think maybe almost more important for council's perspective, Steve mentioned the interest of the town. And I think that through a legal agreement, that whatever, as Steve pointed out, cost, responsibilities, etc., that would normally or could be bared by the town as a result of letting this project go through, that if there was an agreement, that Flato would agree that they would basically absorb those costs, and that the town wouldn't have to bear them. So I think some of the concerns that have been raised could be addressed, I think, in a very simplistic way. But those are my comments, and ultimately I would lean towards what Councilor Bernardo is suggesting, which is the support of option number 2.
And I guess to that point, Deputy Mayor, you know, those finer details could be worked out through those additional discussions and negotiations that option 2 speaks to. I mean, option 2 isn't really committing to anything. It's basically just saying, you know, continue to have those discussions and see if we can find agreement on everything. And any other questions? Councilor Buffett, you're muted.
Unmute.
There we go.
Sorry, I seem to have a problem with the mute button all the time. I just wanted to reiterate a lot of what Steve had already said with regards to all of the legalities and things that can be incorporated into an agreement to everybody's satisfaction, be it the town, the county, and all the surrounding landowners that are having issues both in Melanchthon and Amaranth. And so I think that option 2 would make sense to do that.
Any other questions? Councilor Bernardo, it sounded like you were prepared to make a motion.
Yeah, I move that we go with option number 2.
Okay.
of the report.
Okay, that's directing staff to consult further with the county. The full options contained in the agenda, so I won't read it out in its entirety. Is there a seconder? So moved by Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Buffett. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Carried. Okay. All right. Thanks, Steve. Okay, so we're sort of jumping around a little bit here, but we will now move back to the presentation section of the agenda to deal with the 2021 municipal grant funding presentations. So we have a total, I believe, of 9 applicants who are going to be online tonight making presentations. Each applicant rather will have 10 minutes, and the order of presentation has been determined by alphabetical order. So after each presentation, there will be an opportunity for members of council to ask any questions before we move on to the next application. So first up, I would like to welcome Alethea Stevenson on behalf of the Dufferin County Canadian Black Association. Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Good evening. I'm just going to share my screen with everyone and then I'll get started. So first of all, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Mills, Deputy Mayor Anderson, council members, staff, and special guests. On behalf of the board of the Dufferin County Canadian Black Association, thank you for the opportunity to walk you through our funding proposal tonight and to share a little bit more about the association. As you may recall, I presented to you several weeks ago on the association and the fact that we've registered and our goals, mission, and mandate, etc. So tonight I'll be able to share a little bit more about our progress and the reasons around our funding. So the association itself was registered on June 3rd, 2020. And this association came about after many discussions with community leaders and stakeholders about the growing Black population in Dufferin County. And when we talk about the Black population within the Black community, we are very diverse. So it's important to know that it's inclusive of those who identify from African descent, individuals from the Caribbean and Latin diaspora. And the whole point of the organization is to provide a voice and to advocate for and have a safe space, along with the opportunity to be able to provide educational programs, support services, community outreach, and scholarship opportunities benefiting families within Dufferin County. The association is committed to being a true community partner, working with other established agencies to bring value to the county with a strong focus on our Shelburne community. Of course, the fact is, I am a resident of Shelburne and, Shelburne is a high priority. Our association is inclusive and welcoming to all who wish to volunteer, provide feedback, attend events, and sign up for future programs. We are a registered nonprofit organization. Our board consists of some familiar faces that you may very well know. So we have Linda Grant, who is a financial planner and is no stranger to Shelburne and Dufferin County. She was a part of the EDC, as well as a member of Dufferin Women in Business, as well as a former business owner right here in town. Gear Harvey, who many of you also know, has a Master of Science in social work from York University. He works with many of our youth at St. Dufferin District High School and is a community leader in various forms. Most recently, a member of our task force, Anti-Black Racism Task Force, right here in the town of Shelburne. Jordan Stevenson, again, is another former resident of Shelburne, but another great community leader who has a tremendous track record of outreach and community engagement and mentoring and developing youth in the community. And of course, Alethea, myself, who many of you already know, strong leader in the community advocating for youth and families. On this slide, we've got the mission, vision, and values of the association. So the mission is simply to provide leadership for the continued development and enhancement of the Black community through civic engagement, education, programs, and services, and to advocate for equity and well-being for the Black community in Dufferin County. We want to be a central hub for resources, tools, and programs that are unique to the needs of the Black community. Our vision is to develop and foster a socially and economically equitable group that will continue to contribute to the growth and the development in Dufferin County and Canada, and to have a strong focus on youth achievement and excellence, to partner with government officials at all levels, local businesses and corporations to bring awareness and partnering on issues that impacts the community. And of course, our values are around advocacy, excellence, education, and integrity. The funding amount that we're asking of the town of Shelburne at this point is $5,000. It's important to note that we have also applied for funding from the federal government. However, we have not yet received feedback on that. We will also be submitting a funding request to the county as well as soon as that becomes available, as well as other available community grants available to the BIPOC community. And of course, it's important to know that, the town of Shelburne partnering with the Dufferin County Canadian Black Association is a success, because we are providing programs and tools and everything that will benefit not just the Black community, but the entire Shelburne community. So some funding activities that we've planned to date, we've had to get very creative given the fact that we're still dealing with COVID-19 and social distancing. So some of our top funding activities is membership registration fees. So we've got tiered membership where if you're an individual, there's a set fee. If you are a business, you can register and there's a set fee for that. And in return, there are certain benefits associated with each. We don't have yet any in-person activities planned, but we do have quite a few online activities scheduled. So for example, we have partnered with a number of individuals to provide something that we've coined Ask the Experts. So if you are a realtor in the business and you have an expertise where you can talk about various topics such as, planning for your future, buying your first property, financial literacy again, setting up yourself for success, whether it's for retirement or just budgeting and savings. So we've had some experts volunteer their time to come in and partner with us to deliver some great programs. We are also looking at getting donations from community members, partners, and of course, the town of Shelburne. So how will funding be used? One of the main priority is cultural awareness and education programs, workshops and presentations on various topics, including financial literacy, mental health. Both mental health and financial literacy is critical to the community, not just the Black community, but as we've seen through just even looking at the impacts of COVID-19 over the past several months. There is a high need, for individuals to be able to cope and, learn coping strategies with our students. The major change that they're all going through right now has severe impacts to mental health. So it's important that we prioritize this as well to make sure that we're providing the right supports for our community. Something that is essential and critical to our community as well is to provide scholarship opportunities for post-secondary students. Tutoring and mentorship programs as well is another important element. And of course, mentorship, I think we all benefit from mentorship in some way, shape, or form. Having that person who, whether it's someone senior, someone your peer, to be able to coach you, guide you, provide simple feedback, to open up avenues for you, doors for you, so that you are aware of different opportunities. So having these mentorship sessions are crucial to the development and to strengthen our Shelburne community and to set our youth up for future success. I have also captured here field trips and tours. So for example, we're looking at partnering with the Museum of Dufferin to provide educational and cultural programs. And part of that, there would be costs associated with getting students to and from, and making sure that we we have the proper parameters in place in terms of social distancing, if we are looking at something like that while we're still going through the pandemic. Something a little bit further out, springtime, healthy eating and lifestyle program. And so we're looking at the opportunity to purchase an agricultural plot to teach our youth about the importance of farming and healthy eating and the healthy habits associated with leading a healthy lifestyle. So food is more than just going to the grocery store. I think it's critical that our young people understand the basics of, cultivating and the cycle of from planting to the plate. How will the town of Shelburne benefit from activities? All students, everyone will be able to benefit. So despite the name in the Dufferin County Canadian Black Association, it is open to everyone in the community. So all youth will be able to participate in events and programs. Events are inclusive in nature and will be designed to bring our community together through civic engagement and education. All community members are welcome to register for our programs and participate and volunteer your time as well. If you have a skill or an expertise, we welcome that skill and knowledge to the table. Local businesses will be able to promote and showcase their businesses on our website. So we've got a portal where you can simply register for a fee and you'll be able to have your business location, your business name, information about your business readily available so the community can access and find out more about you, where you're located and shop from you. Community members will also be able to access community-specific information in a central spot, including job and volunteer opportunities. And some of the lessons that we've learned, especially in the past year, when it comes to getting information out to the community, as well as the community's ability to be able to find critical information that is specific to them. It was a challenge and not everyone gets information the same way. And so, for example, things like, the mayor newsletter and the regular updates that Mayor Mills will share about COVID-19. Not everyone is on Facebook, so it would be another opportunity where we can centralize information, just gather information from all the different sources and have it accessible in one central location. Critical news that needs to be disseminated will also be made available. Another learning that we've identified is the fact that there are lots of volunteer and job opportunities out there, but it's also that awareness, so that lack of awareness within the community. So being able to provide a portal where individuals can now access opportunities is critical to the success of our community. Just a quick breakdown of our membership fees. Youth $50 annually, and business goes up to $240 annually. Accomplishments to date. So of course, we've registered as a nonprofit, we've sourced a developer, and we are, I would say, about 60% complete with our website. We've had to make some really critical changes to make sure that our website is set up for success and accessible for everyone. We've also finalized our board members, and we've also received a few donations as well. Our bank account, of course, is already set up, and we've established partnerships with some amazing organizations, both within Dufferin County as well as outside. We've also been able to secure a scholarship opportunity. The last time I was here, I mentioned that the Dale Hill Scholarship will be made available to Dufferin County Canadian Black Association as well, to one Black individual and one Indigenous individual. So that is another success to date. We've got organizations like Town Teas who have also stepped up to offer scholarship opportunity as well. So lots of great successes to date, and I'm proud of the accomplishments that, that we've done so far. So the proposed budget, just a quick outline of what we're asking for. So financial literacy session, as I mentioned, it is key. So we've set aside some funding for that. And of course, all of these numbers here would have to be vetted and validated, and we have a process in place where we'll be securing pricing from 3 different individuals before we make a final decision. And the great thing is that we have a team of experts at the table with various backgrounds who will be at the table to vet and make sure that we're getting the best price for all of all of our projects that we're undertaking. So we've also captured some of our other budget items that we're not asking the town for at this point, but we'll be open to if the town sees fit to be able to give us extra funding. So for example, the original registration of the website, we're looking at doing again the garden plots, tours. Those are some of the future costs that we're looking at as well. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Great. Are there any questions for Alethea? You said you did apply for county funding as well, Alethea?
I will be applying. I don't think the application is ready as yet.
But you will be. Okay. Okay. Anything else for Alethea?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. I find I guess the development of the association timely in the sense that you had these marches that happened in Orangeville, particularly in Shelburne, to be more precise in using the actual language, the Black Lives Matter marches, and which in large part led to the creation of the task force. So it's important to note that the community itself, being the town of Shelburne, and other municipalities as well, has seen the importance of these safe spaces, programs, educational awareness. And so to me, I see this stepping up and addressing what the community has identified as being a need. So I just want to commend you for doing that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Okay, great. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Have a great night, everyone.
We'll see you soon. Okay, the next presenter is Carola Little on behalf of Little Family for Haunt in the Park.
Hello.
Doesn't look like Carola, but that's all right.
No, you get me. It's Jeremy.
How you doing?
Not too bad. How you guys doing?
Good, good.
Different world we live in now.
Yes, a little strange, but anyway.
Yeah, a little bit. So you guys got our grant proposal, and it's more or less the same as last year.
Yeah.
Well, would have been this year, but that's kind of a dumpster fire. So it is basically the same. If we can move ahead with the 2021 use of the Fiddle Park for the term outlined in the proposal, I think it was 6 weeks from the 1st of October to the middle of November, to allow us to build the haunt and collect our donations and stuff for the food bank.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything different with this year's application.
No, it's pretty well the same. Yeah, it's we've been doing it for a while now, so we kind of know what we need to do.
Yep, have it down to a fine art.
Well, I wouldn't call it an art, organized chaos.
Okay.
So
yeah, no, that's good. Are there any questions for Jeremy? Sort of a known entity, so probably not, but. No, okay, all right.
I'd like to just take a minute and address this year with you guys.
Sure.
I think Pearl had talked to Jennifer about it. Obviously, we're not going to be able to do the haunt as per normal this year with the COVID restrictions and everything, and with the numbers going up. It doesn't look like it's even a feasibility to actually build a full haunt. What we'd like to do with the town's approval is we'd like to just build a float or two and go around on Halloween night to the individual neighborhoods and collect our donations and kind of bring like a mini haunt to the town, maintaining our social distancing. And of course, all our people will be wearing masks and gloves because, that's part of Halloween anyways. So just kind of your thoughts and feelings on that kind of an idea before we move forward fully with that plan.
Can you give us a week or so to kind of mold
Oh
that?
yeah, for sure. I just wanted to get it in your guys' radar before, because like I'm sure the way things are going that we're not going to have any sort of mass event because nobody else has been able to either. So and then we were looking into the insurance and the different options of even like a drive-through haunt or whatever. Basically, Cruson just laughed us out of the office because they said there's nobody on the planet that would insure us right now. So for anything event-wise, so we're just trying to, keep it going and bring a little bit of Halloween to the town, and they could probably use a bit of an uplift in spirit.
Yeah.
So it's just a thought.
Yep.
Quick question.
Sorry, Walter, Councillor Wagner, and then you. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, just a quick question regarding the insurance. Would you be able to secure some insurance for participating in the neighborhoods and driving around?
When we were talking to Cruson's, they're working on it, but our vehicle insurance covers anything we tow.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's already kind of in place, because it's not a parade by any means. It's just a pickup truck and a trailer going around town. So they are looking at an additional policy, just for
Like
extra caution. But as it stands, the vehicle insurance covers what we're towing.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Yeah, because I think that we would definitely need to look at something, hopefully Cruson can come up with something just because.
Yeah, Diane was looking into it for us. So
yeah, and it's something still kind of in the town that you're sort of doing, and we could still be liable if something were to take place, and we as council sort of approved it, to take.
For sure. Yeah.
We need to make sure we cover that ground for sure. But I love what you guys are doing and that you're trying to still bring Halloween to the town. So keep it up and just keep us posted about that insurance.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Councillor Bernardo.
So that was part of my question. I think the town would have to be identified because we know for sure that if something were to happen, we'd get sued. They're going to always sue them.
Oh yeah, I understand. Yeah, anybody with the biggest insurance policy gets it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you said you were going to go through the communities, community, you're looking for donations in the way of money gathering, correct?
Money and food donations for the food bank. That's all we're just looking to help out the food bank because we understand that they're having troubles with their drives this year because of all the COVID stuff too.
Yeah, food could easily be put at the end of a driveway, for example, or whatever, and picked up.
Yeah.
Money might be a little bit more of a problem. That's why I was asking that question.
Yeah, we'll come up with something like they do in church, a basket on a stick or something along those lines to maintain the social distance and just to make it safe for everybody.
If you could, Jeremy, I mean, I hate to put extra work on your plate, but if you could just draft up a bit of a proposal as to how you envision that.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Working, and then we can sort of vet it through all the channels that we have to make sure we're in good stead.
Yeah, no, we'll draw up a quick proposal, of what the plan is and what we plan on, we actually plan on doing it. And like we're only talking, 6 to 8 volunteers kind of deal. So we're going to try to keep our group down to a minimum too. Just enough to bring the spirit along with us.
Yeah.
Well, it's not in spirit, but it's great that you are going through the town and collecting for the food bank and trying to help out the community in a way. I think it's a fantastic idea. It could work.
Yeah, we hope to make it work.
Okay. Excellent. All right. And anything else for Jeremy? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Be in touch soon.
Yep. You guys have a nice night and we'll get that proposal sent off to you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So next we have Dan Sample speak about the Schilberfest, another known entity.
I can't determine if he's online. There's a phone number dialed in, 519-939-2369. I'm not sure if that's him. Other than that, I don't have him logged in.
Okay. Doesn't seem like it. I don't think that's his cell number, to be honest.
Is that possible this year with the way things are going to hold? I know it's just staff report. Yeah, it's February, but
I don't see Dan. Dan's not on the line.
Where's Heather? Okay, thanks for the
It's in the
comment
chat.
there, Heather, to clear that up. Okay, well, we'll skip over it. I mean, if Dan signs on later, we can come back to him. So next we have Deb Wagstaff on behalf of the Shepherd's Cupboard Food Bank. I saw Deb's name on there. Here she is. Hey there, how are you doing?
Hello. Good.
Good.
Everybody. I kind of gave a more in-depth presentation last year for the food bank. I'll give you some quick updates. As of from January, I guess 2020, we now have a website. We hooked ourselves up for e-transfers in February, right before COVID hit. So that was very timely. And so a lot of things got put in place that really helped us. The community super generous, and we noticed a real influx in donations at the beginning of COVID back in like April, May. Something I've sort of seen trending though is that we are spending more than we're bringing in again now. Donations dropped off drastically, I'd say by about July. So for that first bit, kind of when panic hit, it was a great, we're in good shape right now, but I think looking big picture, the economic effects of COVID, they're saying easily 2 to 3 years ripple effect. So we're trying to be in a really good position. As you guys know, last year, we only had about $8,000 in the account. We were worried about how we were going to stay open. So it's one of those things where cyclically with the food bank, I've noticed that it can go really low and then it can be healthy and then it goes low. So I'm sort of, Ardith Dunlop's been fantastic there for 25 years. So when we sort of panic, she's like, it's okay, we've got this. It always comes back. And so we're just looking to continue partner with the town. I think it's important. We've seen a bit of new partnership with Melanchthon and Mulmer of a small amount this year. We approached them as well. And we, as Jeremy has already said in his presentation, a lot of the ways we would normally collect food, we can't because of COVID. So our Thanksgiving drive is massive that the high school kids would usually do, which can't happen this year. Halloween haunt can't happen. They're trying with the farm tour to just go to the grocery stores in Orangeville, Grand Valley, and Shelburne and collect food, but they're already preparing that it's not going to be near what people would have brought if they were going to the farm tours. So a lot of our avenues we would normally fundraise. Compass Run is a virtual run this year. So they also, it looks very different. So a lot of places where we would normally get support just doesn't look the same this year because of COVID. We've been running the kids breakfast program out of the food bank. As soon as the schools closed back in March, we started that. For the last 6 months, we've been offering and serving 50 families a month extra on top of food bank. Again, because of COVID, because of where we're located, we were able to be open when the schools couldn't run those programs. So again, it's really useful for, I think, the town in general, that when we have needs, we have a space that we can safely, with the protocols we have, help others. And we just jumped in and offered that program, a partnership with Heather Bell Palin. You'll hear from her soon. And so that was really a great initiative that we were able to help out until school got started again. Yeah, I think that other than that, if you guys, we've gotten a few really specific grants. We were able to get a grant, a Trillium grant for 10,000, but it had to be specifically for something in the food bank. We were able to get a new fridge and freezer for food bank. We have old rusty freezers, so that was really exciting to come in, and that money could go straight to that. It had to go to that, so that was fantastic. We were also able to get a grant specifically for seniors. So we've been able to give each senior a $15 Giant Tiger gift card to buy extra things that we maybe aren't able to give them that they would need. And so we're trying to look, and we also got a Harbinger grant because the schools are closed, they were able to allocate us money to go towards an increase in produce coupons for our clients as well. So Ardith and I are behind the scenes working hard to try and find extra grants that are specific to COVID. Ardith and myself have been at the food bank every shift since March. And I've missed a couple actually in the summer. So Ardith has been at every shift. And so between the two of us, we have been down there in the trenches. We have noticed that if we look at numbers from last year to this year, we do have some clients who are actually nervous and apprehensive because of COVID to come out. And we have a lot of new clients, but a lot of our older clients that would have been our usuals are slowly coming back now, we're noticing in the fall. So we've seen some we haven't seen since March coming back now in September, October. So that's another kind of trend that we've noticed happening over the last few months. Is there any questions you guys have?
I'll just make a comment, Deb. I want to thank you personally for everything that you and your team have done over the past number of months. I mean, I know in the early days, you and I were on the phone together on a fairly regular basis. Yeah, I mean, what you guys have been able to do as a small organization, I think is, nothing short of miraculous. And it's nice to know that you had the support of the larger community when we needed it most. And that, that really is a good feeling, I think, or should be, at least for all of us. While you have this platform, are there any items in particular that you guys need right now? I mean, outside of the grant funding you're applying for, but just from the general public, are there any food items in particular that you're in dire need of?
I think it's basically just the normal ones. And like I said, we can't anticipate what it looks like without all our usual big food drives heading into Thanksgiving and Christmas. TransAlta just donated 30 turkeys for us. So most of our clients will get a turkey for Thanksgiving now, which is fantastic. I think that, again, like everybody else, it's so hard to predict what's coming and what that's going to look like. And so we've gone to a drive-through system, but working with Mel Lloyd Center, the way that we were doing it after a few weeks is not going to work going into the winter with snow removal. So we are out there in the parking lot with Kevin scratching our head trying to figure out how we're safely going to keep the clients moving through. And we need a couple more guys to lift. My husband's been lifting the 50-pound hampers every Wednesday since March. And so he's back at work again full-time as well. He's been given permission to come in on Wednesdays and help, but we really need some other guys. And it's hard to find guys in the middle of the day between 11:30, 12:30 to lift. But with the new hamper style program that we're running, because the clients can't be in the Mel Lloyd Center, they have to stay in their cars, which means we have to lift the food to them. And so that's actually a real need right now, is just we need a couple more strong guys to lift on Wednesdays.
Wednesdays between, would you say 11:30 and 12:30?
11:30 and 12:30.
Okay.
Yeah, we've shortened our hours. We've found that the hamper style program has made us much more streamlined and efficient. It's very effective. The clients like it as well. The only catch is the heavy lifting on our volunteers, which only a few of them can do, right? A lot of our seniors, there's no way they could lift them.
How are you handling food, like donations right now, the drop-offs, just at the grocery stores, or are they not doing that at this point?
The grocery stores actually stopped for a bit at the beginning of COVID, which threw us into a bit of a panic, but they have since picked that up, allowed that to happen again. So that's been where most of our stuff. We also, because of our extended hours on Wednesdays with breakfast program, we've been open from 9 until 1:30. And so people have been dropping off stuff during that time frame. We've been encouraging them to come. And because early years is closed, we have been using the early years room as well as an extra storage room. And so all of our food can be quarantined up to like 7 to 14 days before it's actually reaching clients again. So that's been really great. Again, once early years opens again, it'll be a revamping and looking at how to do things. But for now, we have been able to build the hampers in the early years room.
Okay. Councilor Bernardo?
So space could be an issue down the road when and if everything opens up again for how we do stuff, but we'll figure it out.
those 50-pound hampers, you need guys to lift them from the early years room to outside the parking lot? Like I'm
Yeah,
trying,
to door A.
sorry?
Yeah, Walter, what we have right now is we build them in the early years, but we move them down into the early years has like a boardroom meeting, which was our previous interview room, which is at the bottom of the stairs. And so we're moving them from the bottom of the stairs up the flight of stairs, and then we take it out to the client's car and put it in their trunk. They pop their trunk and we put it in.
So you don't use the elevator?
Not at that end. That's why we're looking at for the winter, because we can't do the drive-through from that end. So we're in the middle of trying to figure out a different way to do that for Wednesdays. It depends, because if we have to transfer all the food from the one end of Mel Lloyd up to the elevator to the back to door C, it's going to add some time. And also we don't want to wear out our volunteers with extra back and forth if we can't help it. So we're in the middle of it right now. We're trying to figure out the best way to do that.
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm fit for going up and down stairs with 50.
No, yeah, this
I
the
don't
stairs
know
are
what
tricky.
the hell. I'm available, but not for going up and down stairs.
Thank you, Walter, though, for your offer. Yeah, it is tricky.
Deputy Mayor Anderson?
Thank you. And I would suggest that Walter can actually do the stairs. I saw him do it during the campaign, so there's no excuse, Walter. But Deb, I do have a question for you. This is just for my clarification. So when you say the grocery stores, for example, are participating now in the program, is it just a situation where people, like they provide a box and you could sort of drop off your donations? Because I've seen in other stores where they actually have a package that they put together, and you could actually purchase that package, and then that package is actually delivered to the organization. And so is there an opportunity to do the latter if that's not being done already?
So yeah, different stores do different things. So No Frills does we actually lost the big box during COVID, and it was a head office decision. They put that cart. The shopping cart doesn't hold as much, but that was just a head office decision. Giant Tiger does sometimes for us the bags, like you're suggesting, with food in it, and so does Foodland. Because of COVID, both of those organizations, I know Foodland did collections over the summer towards the Breakfast Club program. And so they did it that way to help us out with that we were running for the summer. And heading into the fall, I know they've been doing more gift cards, and I'm assuming because of COVID, that may be why that they've gone that way instead of having the box for food. But yeah, so all three stores have been super supportive during COVID to help us. Ordering can be tricky, especially at the beginning, where everyone was kind of scared to go in the shopping stores. Ardith and I were out there trying to get stuff, and we can't buy it off the shelves. And sometimes, like, No Frills couldn't get the order of canned fruit in, so it wasn't like they weren't. So that sometimes has been a supply issue, has been an issue, like a hard thing for us. So we've had back orders on a lot of things. And so we're just concerned that, again, the next wave we see a rise in COVID numbers. If the grocery stores people start to hoard again, it really affects us on our ability to shop and buy. So it's really hard, because then that's when we're usually asking if everyone could buy a box of Kraft Dinner if we can't get the cases in. And that's when I'll put it out on the Facebook page to try and get items that we have to have in, kind of thing. So it's just a lot of unknowns. We kind of keep our eye on sort of the supplies for grocery stores, because it is affected by people when they hoard.
And just my last question, Deb, if I may, Wade, and I know Walter has another question, it seems, but as the community becomes more diverse, so are the needs, and I'm sure you're finding that when it comes to being able to cater to maybe a diverse population when it comes to foods. I know a lot of food banks are sort of going through that transition or dealing with that issue with respect to getting foods that would satisfy certain cultural backgrounds that are now accessing the food bank. Have you found that that's an issue at this point, or something that you anticipate down the road?
We do our best. We have a gluten free section. We also, I find that where we would never be able to get rid of chickpeas and a lot of canned beans, that's actually very popular with some families now. And so we don't have a limit on those. Vegetarians as well. That can be really helpful. We haven't had the money in our budget to allocate to have buy specifically for people, if that makes sense. Like during the Breakfast Club program, I knew we have lactose-free, we have gluten-free bread and lactose-free milk coupons now. So that is an option for families. And I did try with, I had a few families that were gluten-free, their kids in the breakfast program. So I tried to help and cater to that a little bit as I can. But with the number of people we serve, we really rely on donations. So we do actually get some interesting donations from the city. And then you just see clients' eyes light up, like with different things like Arabic tea or things that maybe we wouldn't usually have or carry. And so definitely that would be something in the future that it would be fantastic if people donated more of those types of foods to the food bank as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
And just to get right down to brass tacks, I mean, essentially you're asking for the same amount that you received last year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And that's again, it would be fantastic just as a continued support partnership with the town of Shelburne in just watching out for anyone that's with food insecurity, especially because a lot of them are seniors. We do see that trend. And so it's just able to say that the town is supporting us and a partner with us.
Okay. Councilor Bernardo.
I'm a senior, but anyway, moving on. The radio, Debbie, does the radio help you out a lot when you run into those situations for advertising when you're low on items and need items? Do you get a lot of help?
Yeah. Rod has been fantastic. So we've been in there a few times with Rod. So when we do have a shortage of something, then he's quite happy to let us come down, or he'll put a shout out for us. So yes, he does. Thanks for that.
Okay, I wasn't sure because I know we have radio spots that they give to the town. I was going to ask staff if we can utilize for the same reason to help out when.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, they've been generous with that as well, and it's been great that the town has actually started to post some of our stuff on their website. I think that helps because, like Alf said, not everyone is on Facebook, so it's good to have other ways as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Take care.
Okay, so next we have Heather Verpelen, who I believe is the call-in. Heather's from the Children's Foundation of Guelph and Wellington Food and Friends program, which is formerly or was formerly known as the local school breakfast program. Heather, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. And I just wanted to start off with a good shout out to Deb Wagstaff at the Shelburne Food Bank. We've worked together since the school closed back in March, trying to bring our food from the schools into the food bank to help with the Breakfast Club baskets that they started, and also some Grocery Foundation gift cards to help with the food, purchasing that as well for them. So it was a really great experience working with Deb and her team. They're amazing crew there. So the Children's Foundation right now, we've requested a $4,000 grant to help us out with being able to provide families in the Shelburne area with a healthy food kits for their children to pack in their lunches when they go to school, and as well as to help the covering the cost of food or gas cards for the volunteers. We are starting delivering food to families' homes because of COVID and everything else that's been happening. So start of September, the Upper Grand School Board, they suspended the student nutrition program. So the breakfast programs in all of the 5 schools in Shelburne right now have been canceled. They just announced last week that they are allowing schools to have an emergency food grab and go program where they would have a brown bag, non-perishable food in that bag, just for kids who have forgotten their lunches or if they need an extra snack. So that will be there provided at the schools. So the Children's Foundation Food and Friends program will still support those schools who decide to open those emergency programs. But right now, we are really encouraging our parents in our communities to sign up for the Food and Friends at Home initiative. So this initiative is a home delivery program that we're going to be delivering to homes all through Dufferin, Wellington, and Guelph. So we're starting this program, actually tomorrow is going to be our first deliveries. So this food that's going to be in these kits will provide a meal for each child in their home. A student in all the schools in Dufferin County can apply to this program. And they're going to have enough meals in these kits to provide, excuse me, a meal for school every day for 2 weeks. Let's scoot down my paperwork here. So these, we've collaborated as well with the Orangeville Food Bank. And so we're using their facility right now to package these food kits. And they are letting us borrow some of their volunteers to package this food. But the Children's Foundation, we have our own volunteer drivers. So the drivers will be driving down from Shelburne, picking up the food at the Orangeville Food Bank, and then going back up to deliver around the Shelburne area and throughout Dufferin County as well. So the food kits that they're going to be providing to the families will have a variety of food that are going to be in this: fruit, vegetables, and some grain and protein like apples, fruit cups, whole grain crackers, granola bars, eggs, and cheese, and yogurt cups. So out of all of this, we're hoping that the parents can then, or the students can pack their own lunches with this food, and then they'll have enough, they'll have their lunches provided for them during this program. So altogether, they will have 10 meals in each kit. So these deliveries are going to be going out every other week. And again, I said that we are going to start this tomorrow. So every 2 weeks from tomorrow, this will be going on. So we're prepared to have this program go out throughout the whole school year. And unfortunately, maybe we'll be providing this even for the following year, depending on the situation. We're seeing that with the increased numbers of COVID right now, we're predicting that we'll have more home deliveries with everything happening in our community. Is there any questions that anybody would have for me?
Questions?
Yes.
Steve, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Mills. And thanks, Heather, for your presentation. I've been to a number of schools in I guess what some would consider underprivileged areas where they have these breakfast programs. And I know firsthand from seeing it myself how important they are into allowing children to actually be in a position where they can actually learn. It's very difficult to do that when you have a hungry stomach, right? So I certainly commend the work that you're doing. It's necessary work. With respect to the schools in Shelburne, do you know how many of them have restarted the program or are now open to sort of this new way of delivery of food?
Mm-hmm. I know of Glenbrook has been talking about opening up something right at the beginning of the school year, but because the Upper Grand School Board really put a halt on all of these programs in the school until last week, we're just kind of still working through the kinks to see which school in the area will be opening up an emergency food program.
Okay. And the deliveries that you say that are going to be starting in the next day or so, including Shelburne, I believe that you mentioned, if you can, is there, is that the deliveries in Shelburne, does that represent 20% of all of your deliveries, 50% of all of your deliveries? I don't mean to put you on a spot, but if you have some sort of idea.
Yeah, I actually, unfortunately, don't have that that information at this point. Right now, out of 16 or out of 33 families that we have registered, 16 of them are going to the town of Shelburne.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay, any other questions for Heather? Okay, great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Have a great night. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Heather. Okay, next we have the Heritage Music Fest. So Linda, this is, so just before you start, Michael, we'll let Councillor Buffett temporarily exit. Okay. Michael, how you doing?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Good. Good.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah. Yeah, loud and clear.
All right. Well, first of all, I'd just like to thank you and council on behalf of the Rotary Club of Shelburne for giving us this opportunity to present our request. We've been lucky to have the support of council over the last few years to keep the event going. Unfortunately, 2020 has been a theme for a lot of groups, and we've had challenges. We had to cancel the event this year, which would have been our 70th anniversary. So we're going to be doing the 70th anniversary event next year in 2021. We're still hoping to utilize funds from the town for advertising and promotion to increase our diversity and attendance of the festival. We have been putting a focus on expanding the events in the Fiddle Park with a focus on the Bands and Brews event, which we were planning to expand that, and we want to expand that, continue that plan into next year to call it Bands and Brews and Barbecue, add a food element to that to make it more of an event that more people in the community would enjoy attending, something for everyone really. So we haven't been silent though, or non-active this year due to COVID. We did have, we thank the Shelburne EDC for partnering with us to do the golf tournament. So we've been continuing our fundraising activity. We also do a wreath and greenery sale for the Christmas season. We also had plans for Scott Wood's concert at the Grace Tippling Hall, but that unfortunately, because of COVID, that's been canceled as well. But we hope to continue those activities going on. The Heritage Music Festival, along with the Canadian Open Old Time Fiddle Championship, is a tradition in Shelburne for 70 years, and it helps to preserve our heritage and showcases and promotes Canadian musicians. We have been continuing to support local charities, especially during COVID, including the Food Bank and other local groups. We also have been embarking upon the fundraising for the splash pad as well. So that effort has got off to a good start despite COVID and the inability to do certain events. We still are hoping, depending on what happens in terms of restrictions and things like that, but we're still hoping to have the 6 different musical events over the 5 days with the Country Jamboree, Sunday matinee, the Friday headliner, and the Fiddle Championship. And then also including in that will be the Bands and Brews and Barbecue in the Fiddle Park. So in terms of this past year, so we did apply for grants with the County of Dufferin. We were granted $1,500 for 2020. We did have to return that money. We'll continue to apply for those grants, and we're also hoping to apply to the Central Counties Tourism. So we're looking at other grant opportunities that would potentially be available to us. We did receive the grant last year, and that money was spent for initial advertising and also for updating our website with the 2020 information. We have got the website up and running, and it does have the announcement for next year as well. So we'll continue to promote the event going into 2021 to try and make it as more known as much as possible. So one thing that we've been working towards with the Heritage Music Festival over the last 4 years is to expand the concept of the festival in Shelburne. We've had quite a good success over the last few years, and we want to continue that to make sure it is something that is still something that Shelburne's known for. It's still known for of course, the Canadian Old Time Fiddle Championship. I still get people asking me. I was in the Fiddle Park the other day on the weekend, and a guy driving and his wife were out for a drive and say, "Hey, is this where the fiddle, contest is?" And it was kind of reminiscing about what the contest was in the past. So people still remember that about Shelburne, and I think it's important that we continue that tradition. We have been in conversations prior to the shutdown with Carol Maitland, Alethea, and discussing how we can expand the Bands and Brews And our hope is to include, besides the barbecue, but also other musical genres as well, and have that event in that area as well, and make use of that space. We also want to continue to make this as a pay-as-you-can donation-based event. We don't charge for it. We set it up, and it's basically all done through donations as well. But to keep these kind of events going, funding is critical to make sure those plans become a reality. And just in conclusion, I'd just like to thank Bobby Ferguson for putting all this information together. She unfortunately can't be with us tonight. Her father passed away, and today is the funeral. But she's been very critical in making sure this event is a success as our chair. And we look forward to continue to partner with the town, the local service clubs, and other members of the community to make this event a success. Thank you. And if there's any questions.
Great. Thank you, sir. Any questions for Michael?
Just a comment, if I may, Mayor, which is I applaud you, Michael, and your team for really looking to expand and to make it more inclusive. And so I know that the community will certainly appreciate those steps and are very supportive of that and the great work that you continue to do. And I think that the only thing I'll say in addition to that is your comment about Bobby, that you can certainly send our condolences to her. You know, on the behalf, certainly I'm sure the mayor will comment on that on behalf of council to her.
Thank you very much for that comment.
Okay. All right. Anything else for Michael? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, council.
Talk soon. Just wait until Councillor Buffett. There we go. Okay. All right. Nicole's already up. It's our next presenter from Get Outreach Works. Nicole, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you. So I'm just going to get my screen up here before I get started. All right. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Yep. Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mayor Mills, Deputy Mayor Anderson, members of council, and community members that are online. Again, my name is Nicole Jeffrey, and on behalf of Get Outreach Works, I will be here presenting our SEEP program for 2021. Now, before I go into the presentation, I just want to take this quick opportunity to thank council for all their efforts and to commend you for ensuring and really doing everything that you can to make the town of Shelburne diverse and inclusive. So our program that we are going to be introducing for 2021, I just want to quickly look at some various points and stress some facts. We're going to talk really quickly about Get Outreach Work and our SEEP program for those who may not know it. I just want to share with you our successes for the Black History Month of 2020, and then also review the proposed program for 2021, how we intend to deliver that program, and the highlights that we'll be looking at. And of course, we'll conclude with a Q&A. So the facts about Get Outreach Works, again, it's a nonprofit group. We partner with community-based agencies through education and collaboration. Now, I do want to speak on behalf of the members of Get Outreach Work. Our team is full of members that not only live our vision and our goal, but they also are community partners, and they do in the community promote the best interests of the community. Our SEEP program, which stands for the Cultural Immersion Through Education Program, it's developed in a way to foster community involvement and unity. Again, it promotes the arts through educational curriculum And our main audience has been the elementary and high school students. And we do a grand finale at the end, which addresses all the community members. So just to share a bit of our success for 2020. So the month of February, we were able to go forth with our SEEP program. And it was designed in a way that every week we will attend a different elementary school and bring a different theme to them. So as you see on the screen here, we do have our career theme. This one was done at Glenbrook Elementary School. This was a panel discussion, so it gave an opportunity for the students to be involved, to ask the panel various questions. We had community partners that represented law, police, and fire. And I have to say that the youth were very engaged and they had a good time. Now, we did something a little bit different for the kindergartens to grade 3. And what we delivered for them was a 20-minute presentation read along about Ron McNair, and he was an astronaut. So they learned a little bit of his story and how he had to deal with segregation, and they enjoyed that as well. So this year now is the second week of our program, and we're now at Grand Valley District Elementary School. And we did a sports theme. And the fun thing about this is the principal, Dan, he was amazing. He got the students involved by telling them to wear their favorite jersey. So a lot of the students came into this setting already wearing their favorite sports jersey, and we started a great discussion about various Blacks in sports. And we really focus on how they paved the way for our current and even our future generation. And as you can see on the screen, we focused on Black Ice. And Black Ice is a documentary about the CHL. So before the NHL, there was the CHL. And this was the stamp that was released in the beginning of the year. And this basically showcased their Eureka's. They were the champions of 1904 CHL. Again, Grand Valley asked us to return, and they wanted us to do a military presentation for the third week. And that is exactly what we did. We had our deputy superintendent, Kevin Janor, who took the students and demonstrated with them and gave them an educational piece as well on salutes and drills and medals and awards and why you receive them. We also were joined by council member Liv Taylor as well. This, I have to say, the final week, we did a presentation at Primrose and Centennial Highland, and I would have to say this for myself, personally was my favorite. The students at this particular presentation had an opportunity to learn various dance. So there was 3 African dances and their origins that they learned. This particular dance that they're doing right here is the Maasai, and it's called a jumping dance, as you can see that student doing there. Lastly, we had our food presentation, and this was done at Highland Heights. And so the students had an opportunity to learn about coconuts, the different byproducts of coconuts, what you can make from coconuts. And then they had a taste test. So they even learned how to make festivals. And we provided them with festivals for a taste test, as well as fried plantain and mango nectar. And they enjoyed it. And lastly, we concluded with a grand finale. We invited the community to just take a peek and see this is what we're doing in the school. And we invite you to also take part of this. So we had various community members, community partners. As you can see on the screen, that is some of the members of Get Outreach Work there. And as I said, they are also community. They're very active in their community as well. And we had an opportunity to showcase our themes again, as well as an opportunity to meet different vendors. So our program that we're looking to do for 2021 And of course, we know the current events that are happening at this time. And we definitely, what's been speaking to our team here is the theme of lift every voice. And I think it's safe to say that that is very imperative in this day and age. Maya Angelou said it the best: there is no agony like bearing an untold story inside of you. And so with that being said, we would like to proceed with this particular theme going into the 2021 Black History Month programming. We will continue doing the 4-week enrichment program. The schools enjoyed that, and they've already put their names down for what theme they would like to be presented at their schools already. We will continue to focus on being the voice of those that contributed to history and allowing their stories to be told. So our program objectives, again, it's definitely historical awareness. We know that, education, knowledge is power. Our themes will be careers, sports, entertainment, and food. And we'll just do a rotation with these careers throughout the schools. The availability and access to cultural relevant information. So even after we've done our presentation, many of the schools were provided with additional resources. Jessica Rowden has been the Upper Grand School Board Equity Lead. She's been great. And she's also have done a lot in this program and providing different information. We'll continue to celebrate the contributions of African, African American, African Canadian, and Caribbean ancestry. Now, of course, with everything that is happening today and with the COVID, we just want to let council know that our intention is, again, to be responsive to the legislative changes and the ever-changing climate that's imposed by COVID-19 pandemic. But we believe that this program is imperative to still continue in the school boards. So we've added a flexible schedule to accommodate the current protocols. So depending on, and Jessica, she's been working with us and we've been having meetings with her. So she is basically letting us know what the state will be at that time, but we do have various options. We are looking at, if it is permitted, we will do in person. We can also do pre-recorded sessions, synchronous sessions, and a hybrid model, which would be a combination of the two. Our highlights, again, would be the sports, the careers, the food, the entertainment, Blacks in the military, and then a grand finale, lift every voice. So that concludes the presentation. And again, thank you so much for allowing us this opportunity to share this with you. And we just really want you to, just have an idea and just see how successful you supporting us and how successful it was in the school boards. And we are asking for a grant of $2,000. And this grant is, again, to just continue the diversity and in the inclusion and just educating the students on the importance of everyone's voice being heard. Thank you.
Right.
Is there any questions or
comments? And thanks for the efforts today. It looks like a wonderful set of programming. Are there any questions for Nicole? Deputy Mayor?
No questions, just comments. Thanks again, Nicole. I can speak to the success of your program because, as you can see, myself and Councillor Wegner were present, and I do have to tell council I haven't, and so I'm going to tell you guys now. Nicole did present a framed certificate that I have not brought to council because of COVID-19. So when the time is appropriate, I will bring it to its rightful space, which is Town Hall. So it is actually here in my office, but I am going to bring it and deliver it to council. The program and what I gathered, especially at Glenbrook, it really spoke to the importance of representation. And what you saw on the stage and what you didn't see was Councillor Wegner that was there as well. But you could see the eyes light up when you saw a woman in the position that Councillor Wegner obviously holds and how young girls and young boys looked at her and viewed her while she was there in her capacity when she spoke, or Randy, the fire person, and the OPP officers that were there as well, and of course you and the other guests that you had there on stage. And so it's important. Representation does matter, and I commend you on the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Councillor Wagner.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Steve, for those kind words. I have to 100% wholeheartedly agree. It was a wonderful presentation, and the children were completely engaged. And I didn't fully know the scope of what you had done for the other schools. And so thank you so much for your presentation tonight, because that was awesome. Just, you know, seeing and learning what you did in the other schools, it just makes me so excited for February. So I just love what you do, and I want to just thank you very much and support you all the way and continuing to do so.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments for Nicole? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
You too. Take care. So the next application is for Pickin' in the Park. Greg and Heather are not presenting tonight, but as you'll see, their request is in line with what they have asked for in previous years. So the next one is Sue Peterson on behalf of the Shelburne and District Agricultural Society, and Councillor Wagner has declared an interest on this one. So I'll wait until she is exited and then welcome Sue. Saw you there a minute ago, Sue, but you've disappeared. There you go.
Am I back?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. Thanks for the invitation. So as we all know, we had to cancel this year's fall fair, along with every other fall fair in Ontario. We are looking forward to hosting a fair next year, as long as all goes well. Our donation request is the same amount as it was last year. We did also have to close down the agricultural hall. So there's been no rentals in the hall since beginning of March. It's been closed to all groups that currently rented it, and all weekend rentals. So the money that we did receive for the 2020 fair, we sort of put towards utilities just to keep the building going, where we would normally use rental money for that. So we're requesting the same amount for next year for the fair. We should know hopefully early in the year what lies ahead in respect to holding a fair. But the money would then still go towards the fair prize money that the kids from their entries would win. We pay them money for those winnings, as well as the fair book that we hand out at all the schools end of May, beginning of June. That's quite an expensive book to put together. So that money definitely does offset the cost of that.
Any questions for Sue? All right. Okay. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Get Councillor Wagner back on stream here. And then last but not least is Wayne Hannon on behalf of the Shelburne and District Horticultural Society. Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you very much.
From San Francisco, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm just in my truck to get Wi-Fi tonight. I've had a bit of a challenge here, but anyway, I just want to say thank you very much for asking us to come and speak. It's been quite a year, as you can well imagine. We haven't been able to hold any of our regular meetings so far. We had one board meeting in the beginning, but we've had nothing since. We were really hoping for our annual meeting and our Christmas meeting. Not sure what's going to happen there yet. The numbers are going up, and we're finding our older members, there's a fairly high level of fear with them. They just don't want to get out and contract it and have issues with it. They just don't. We don't want them either. So, but with what we have gone ahead with, we went ahead with the town plantings. One side of me says, I want to apologize. I don't think it's the most colorful year we had for plantings. As you know, in the spring with one of the side effects of COVID, everybody ran out to the garden centers, and we found by the time we got there, second week of May, third week of May, they were drastically picked over. So what we ended up doing was we bought perennials, things with leaf color and different things that would have a longer lasting effect. And we're going to try and mix those in with the annuals we do to try and reduce the watering burden on a hot summer and things like that. So we ended up spending probably more on plants than we normally would, but it'll take them a year or two to get established. So we're hopeful. We're looking for town's feedback. If they, any suggestions or comments are always welcome. We did go ahead as well. We bought COVID supplies, if I can just make a general term, PPE type supplies, hoping that we can. We're going to have a board meeting, probably an in-person meeting. One of our biggest challenges, I guess, as a Hort Society is we have middle-aged members and older members, or more experienced members, and they're not big on computers. And that is a gap that we're working to bridge. But having said that, we're going to hopefully things will be such that we can have an in-person meeting, and we'll take all our precautions and care to have that. The other thing we've tried to ramp up and be more active with is our Facebook page, Shelburne Gardeners. And we've been trying to reach out in the community, just answer questions, be there, be the source for them, and promote good, healthy, growing habits in our community and different things with that. We've had some success. We're seeing some diversity in that group, and that's been wonderful. We haven't seen it at our meetings. So once again, I throw it out if anybody wants to jump on and advise us or give us some hints. We're more than open and welcome to that. Other than that, I guess that's kind of in the air. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to field questions.
Any questions for Wayne? Deputy Mayor, you're a budding gardener this year, so. If you're looking for something more to fill your time, volunteer. But to your point, Wayne, I have noticed actually the Shelburne Gardeners website that does seem to have a fair bit of traffic, and
it does.
People, moving to town, asking questions about what growing zone we're in, and so that I think that's been something really helpful to kind of as you said, fill the gap this year when more traditional activities just can't happen. So that's been good.
We have found it to be a good warm-up for people. They get on the site, you kind of interact with them, and then we've had some of them do come to the meeting, and last year, not this year, but last year, and it had warmed them up. It was kind of an icebreaker for them. But we're trying to, we've started a kind of a piggyback site for food. One of the byproducts of a garden is too much of something or recipe type thing. And we're trying to do that and engage the community in just good, healthy eating and as well sharing. Just, you always have too much of something, and just sharing and starting to, reach out and just goodwill in a community.
Have you ever done any sort of seed exchange programs?
Our specific group has not. I know Guelph does, within our district, Guelph does, and I think Harriston may do something. They have what they call Seedy Saturdays. Mm-hmm. Now, we participated, the library did a Seedy Saturday, and we participated with them. I think that was just pre-COVID, and it was a wonderful day, well attended, and we would love to participate again. They did a bang up job, really good job, commendable job.
Okay.
I got a question for Wayne. Wayne, I know down in Orangeville, they go and have awards for the best looking house, flowers, whatever you want to call it, where they get people in the community to sort of beautify their places and to get the awards for their places. Any thought of going in maybe that direction as well, you know, with the gardens and whatnot, so that more people get involved in gardening and making their place look good?
We've talked about that. That's something we've done. Garden tours have got to be tougher to do this last few years. So we've kind of, everything comes and goes. It's kind of an ebb and a flow. And we have talked about that. And that's something I think we'd like to participate more. We've talked about doing it through the Facebook page. That's one thing we talked about. And we talked about having just kind of like just a one garden on, say, a Saturday morning, a pop-up tour. You know, it's this garden today for 2 hours. That's it. Come enjoy, trying to just promote interest within the community type thing. We're definitely going to revisit that one. That has been on the kind of on our horizon for a while. We're just trying to work out the logistics and how you judge it and do that. But that is something we're looking at moving towards. It's a great idea.
In that vein, I mean, a couple of years ago, there was a contest for Christmas lights, and it was all done online, and members of the public voted. So I think, you know, certain houses were nominated, and then, you know, the final list of nominees, so that there was a picture posted online, or you could drive by and take a look on your own, and then vote on an online poll. I'm not sure how much work's involved in that, but I mean, it's maybe something to encourage more gardening in the community. And yeah,
sure.
Might, you know, encourage people to beautify their yards. So yeah, no, it's good.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Okay. Anything else for Wayne? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Take care, Wayne.
Yep. You too.
So that concludes our formal list of applications. The treasurer just gave me a heads up that there was one application that came in late, but we'll have Carrie just do a sort of summary of that application, and we can consider that as well.
Just Wade, before you begin with that, just on something that Wayne had said about being in his vehicle, picking up the internet or whatever the case may be. And I know you made a major announcement on social media, so I don't know if you're going to be commenting on that. I don't know if it's in the agenda, but you have that?
Yeah, I'll talk about that in communications. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. And through the mayor, we did have a late submission from Shelburne Community Welcome, which is the contact person is Bella Carter. And what they have started up is this organization that is actually replacing the welcome wagon that used to exist within town. And they are looking for $1,000 in financial assistance. What that money would be used for is to obtain insurance, liability insurance, so that they can continue the welcome wagon business. And they do have other sources of in-kind contributions for local businesses and such that donate the contents of those baskets. So I will forward this application to council. It came in late Sunday night, so there was no time to include it on the agenda tonight, but I did tell Bella that I would bring it up. And in addition to that, so our total requested value at the end of the spreadsheet is $20,600. So if you add the Shelburne Community Welcome Association, that would be another $1,000 added to that. And the 2020 budget was $22,000. So something council has to decide is if you're, when you're allocating these funds, if you're going to try to contain the funding allotment into that 22,000, or if you're looking to increase that value. That's just something that you have to keep in mind. And in addition to the grants that applied, the recipients that received funding in 2020, we do have the Shelburne Fiddle Parade that did not apply for 2021. They're going to carry their $1,000 forward. And we also have the BIA Santa Claus Parade that are going to be doing the same thing. The third one is the Shelburne Farmers Market, who have not decided what their market may look like next year. They did receive their $1,000 funding for 2020, and they have indicated to us that funding was used to pay for the market manager that they hired in 2020. So just keep in mind that even though our grant requests this year are under what we normally budget, there may be more requests that come back again next year that didn't apply for 2021. So sorry, they may come back again in 2022 because they've not applied in 2021. And the other one to make mention of is the Highlands Youth for Christ. They did not apply for 2021. And I believe their location in Shelburne has closed. So I'm not sure what their plans are. Their head office is now located in Orangeville. So they didn't apply this year, or sorry, they didn't apply for 2021, but you may see them back again at some point. I'm sure COVID has had a drastic effect on their organization as well. And the other thing I was going to mention too is generally when council approves all the grant funding for the year, we just do one big check run and send out everybody their money in advance so that depending when their event happens throughout the year, they've got that money for deposits and what have you. But I think for 2021, I will hold on to those funds and disperse them as the events happen. If that's okay with council.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay, well, in line sort of with the process last year, we can take some time to consider the applications and the content of the presentations that we heard tonight, and then we'll sort of make our decisions as we go through the budget process. I mean, if everybody's ready at the next meeting, that's fine. But Carrie, when's sort of the final date by which you need us to make up our minds on this?
As far as the distribution goes, that can wait, but I would like to know if you're intending on increasing the bottom line figure of 22,000, just so that I have a placeholder in the budget.
Yeah, okay. Well, why don't we put it on the agenda for next meeting, and at the very least, we'll settle on sort of the total allocation for community grants. And then, I mean, if we need to, we can take some more time to decide how we're going to divvy that up amongst the various groups, but let's at least settle on a base number for you to work with.
Can I ask a quick question? Do we have a policy that when we give the money out, it's used for a specific purpose?
Yes.
So, for example, we give the money out for I'll use the fair, for example, because I heard it tonight. When we give the money out for the fair, it's for the fair, not for utilities on a building. Just I'm using that as an example. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just trying to get an idea on our policy.
Yes, the municipal grant funding application is accompanied with a policy. And in a normal year, those funds would have been used for the purpose as set out in the application. But if you remember earlier on this year, I think it was maybe April, I have a copy of it. In May, I reached out to all the grant recipients, asking them what their intention was for their money so that we could determine whether council wanted to ask for them to return their funds or not. And at the time, we decided that it wasn't necessary to return the money as long as it was used for a COVID-related expense. So I guess it's council's decision whether or not you consider having to pay utilities.
Yeah, no, I just use that as an example. It's council's decision whether we go outside of our policy or not.
With respect to the COVID related implications, I would say yes, but in any normal year, they would be required to use the money for what they
asked it
for. Yes.
Or return it.
Or return it, yes. Okay. And when they reapply the following year, they provide a budget and their financials for how they did spend that money. So that's included in the application.
Okay. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I just have a comment, maybe a comment question with respect to Carrie's suggestion about holding on to the funds until the events actually occur. But that may actually hamper some of the organizations, if I understood you correctly, because there are a number of things that we've heard from a number of these organizations where they need funding for that actually builds up to the event. And so if it's only dispersed at the events, that may actually handcuff them from actually facilitating the event. To me, I think it would be best to make it more consistent with how the county has handled it, which is they've dispersed the funds. If they can't fulfill what they've said they're going to do, then the expectation is they have to send the money back or remit the money back to the county. So for the reasons that I've already heard from some of these organizations, I would like to see it more consistent with the way how the county has handled it. So that way, again, we're not handcuffing these organizations from doing what they want to do for the community.
I think the intention, Carrie, was not necessarily when the event happens, but sort of as the organizations need it. So like ordinarily, if we would send out all of the checks in January, if the organizations don't need it until say March or April or May, then we'll sort of give it to them as they need it, whether that's on the heels of their event or not. But it's just so we're not laying out all of that cash at once if the organizations don't actually need that money that early in the year. Because with some of our COVID community relief programs that we offered this year, I mean, it did put a strain on our cash flow. So, and I think that's what you're getting at, isn't it, Carrie? That if we don't have to lay it all out at the beginning of the year, then we'll sort of hand it out as they need it.
And mainly what I was meaning was more like the events like the Fiddle Parade and the BIA Santa Claus Parade and things like that, that it actually is like an event, on a specific day, not so much the applications for the food and, some of the organizations that run things all year round, that's different. They would need that money up front.
I think the key is we'll just work with the organizations and I mean, if they need it early in the year, we'll give it to them early in the year. But if they're not going to need it until December, then there's no sense in having it just sit in their bank account, sort of dormant for 11 months of the year. But, okay. All right, so we still have quite a few items to work through here, and I'm going to ask for one more indulgence. I had made a bit of a boo-boo earlier on. I thought that Steve Weaver was finished after his last report, but we do still have the DC bylaw. So poor Steve's been hanging around waiting for us to get to that. So if everybody's okay, I'll bump the DC bylaw ahead of the treasurer's budget framework, and then Steve can carry on with what's left of his evening. Sorry about that, Steve.
No problem. I have lots of things to do and I'm working my way through it. So don't feel bad for me.
So this is just a follow-up from last week. We had the public meeting and this is just to adopt the formal bylaw.
Correct. And I just wanted to provide a verbal update to council that there was a written submission received after the public meeting from Kim Harrison, who's representing the property owners of 416, 420, and 428 Main Street West. There's the numbered company and Sayog Investments, Inc. are the two companies that own those properties. I can't think of a copy of that letter and my response was provided to council. So I won't go through the details of it, but to summarize, there were two concerns. One was, basically a question of whether there's been adequate development captured in the DC and in the design of the pumping station, given that their proposal in particular is identifying the potential for more units on the property than was assumed in the DC forecast and in the pumping station design capacity assumption. And the second issue or question was around highway improvements and that recognizing that the capital amounts included in the DC for the West area included the south side of urbanization of Main Street and Highway 89, but not the north, not a cost for the north side. So we reviewed both of those comments with Hempson and ultimately recommended that they can be addressed. And SBA also reviewed the question around the pumping station. And so all of our response is reflected in my email back to Kim, explaining how that can all be accounted for as we move along. The gist of it is that, you know, this build out of this area will occur over a long period of time. I would say at least 5 years, but maybe 10 or more. And flows to the pumping station will be monitored over that time. It may be that upgrades are required down the road, but we can't reasonably anticipate those at this time. Particularly like given that some of the properties in the area are longer term redevelopment potential, such as the industrial property. Regarding the highway improvements, Hempson ran a scenario where they incorporated a doubling of the cost, you know, basically to reflect that the north side would have the same costs assumed as the south side, and also incorporating the additional units. And the per unit cost for the DC was essentially the same. So making the changes requested here didn't have any material impact to the rates. So the recommendation is that we move forward with the DC as bylaw as proposed, and the rates that were presented at the public meeting. And the only other change I'll make note of is that we did make sure that the wording of the clauses of the bylaw mirrors that in the other 3 DC bylaws that were reviewed with legal counsel and passed by council in May. So we've made those changes just to make all the clauses are identical and there's no confusion about why different bylaws are worded different ways. So that's all I have in terms of a verbal update, and I'd take any questions if council has any regarding the DC bylaw for the West area.
Any questions for Steve? Councilor Bernardo?
Steve, does the DC bylaw adequate with the information we heard tonight with the upgrades to the sewage treatment plant and the different amounts? Does our DC bylaws cover that?
I'm not sure I follow. Does it cover, like, if more development happens than what was assumed?
Well, you know that they cover items that are done because of development. With the fact that we now have to upgrade the sewage treatment plant because of development, and the cost at one point was 15 mil, now it's say 21 mil. Does our DC bylaw currently cover that differential? You get what I'm trying to get at?
So the idea with the treatment plant upgrades, the cost of those upgrades would be that it would provide for the full build out of the land within the current urban area, as well as the remaining land in the town that's proposed for urban expansion.
Correct. But if the cost, because to do that build out is going to cost us more to be able to handle that, do our DCs cover the differential?
So most of those costs are related to what's called post-period development. The costs that were put in the town-wide development charge that was passed in May are a bit lower than the ones that were presented tonight because SBA did not have the work as far along as it was in May. At some point along the way, there may be merit in having those town-wide wastewater DCs reviewed to determine whether the amount is substantive enough to warrant an amendment to the DC before we go to the, wait for the next 5-year review, just to make sure we don't miss revenues over the development that happens in the next 5 years. But as I say, most of that cost relates to development that's captured in the DC as what's called post-period development, which means it's beyond the current urban area.
So that, okay, I think you've answered my question. I think there's something in there I caught that you answered. It's the DC wide ones that we, for the whole.
Yes, that's not part of this West area DC. This is only to deal with specific improvements in this localized area. Whereas the May development charge bylaw was the DC that dealt with the overall treatment plant and water supply issues and the town-wide infrastructure requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions for Steve? Okay, if not, look for a mover and seconder for the motions contained in the agenda for the reading and enacting of bylaw number 46, 2020, which is a bylaw to establish the development charges for the town of Shelburne in the west area. Councillor Bernardo, moved by Councillor Buffett. All in favor? That's carried. Great, thank you, Steve.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Go home.
Thanks.
All right, back to item 4, budget framework from the treasurer.
Okay. I'm probably the last person you want to hear from 9:30 at night. Okay, through the mayor. I trust everyone has had an opportunity to read the budget framework, so I'm not going to reread it. I'll just go through and highlight some of the important parts. I have attached as Appendix 1, Council's adopted strategic priorities, which by adopting a fiscal approach to taxation, Council acknowledges those financial obligations that come from those strategic priorities. They span over several years, and the 2020 budget framework showed us that we are ensuring that the financial resources are aligned with your municipal priorities. And so we've decided to continue along that line and present you with a 2021 budget framework. So 2 important facts that I want to pull from the unavoidable cost drivers on page 2 are 2 things that haven't changed from last year. And that is the fact that 84% of the town's assessment is residential base, and 40% of the town's annual operating budget comes from that of local boards and such as fire, police, library, and arena and conservation. Another driver that was unavoidable for us, which is new this year, is of course COVID-19 and its related implications affecting the town with reduced revenues and increased expenses, and something that we never would have imagined at this time last year. With respect to assessment growth, due to COVID, Council is already aware that MPAC has postponed the 2021 phased-in assessment, so it will not roll out as planned. So therefore, municipalities will be preparing budgets for 2021 using the same tax base as 2020. The only difference that we will see here in our town is the difference for additional assessment values related to the growth that we are experiencing. And preliminary numbers for that, the last time I checked, was about 1.7% growth in assessment. And that is due to, mostly due to Highland Village. For grant funding, that's anybody's guess right now. We have no firm commitment from OMPF or OCIF of any funding beyond 2020. So I'm still waiting for announcements for both of those. The allocation that we did receive with respect to COVID for the SAFE restart funding, I'm going to include staff recommendations for how we set that money aside for COVID-19 related expenses. And that will be in my third quarter financial review, which will be coming to council in October. We've already committed staff resources to reapplying for the connecting link for Owen Sound Street. And we will also be reapplying for the OCIF or ICIP Green Stream again for well 3. And as always, staff are always researching for grant opportunities for anything else that we may be eligible for. For staff resources, The service delivery review that was to take place in 2020 was not completed due to pressures such as COVID and the OPP costing. The SDR will be included in the 2021 budget. This report is recommending that approximately 2.5%, or just over 186,000, be included for support staffing, which is currently resource challenged. And council has already identified throughout 2020 areas of concern that require more consideration. Prior to the comprehensive SDR, the CAO will be completing a preliminary internal review of key staffing and administration as it relates to communication, economic development, customer service, reception needs, document management, and clerk and treasury functions. This report is anticipated to come before council by November of this year. With respects to Parks and Recreation, in 2020, council had already established a 2% levy to be directed to capital Parks and Recreation infrastructure. In this report, staff are now recommending an additional 1% levy commencing in 2021 in order to maintain the operational focus on increased use of parks and park amenities. This special levy will assist with offsetting the operational costs associated with COVID-19 impacts that we have been experiencing as they relate to enhanced park facility cleaning 7 days a week, porta potty rentals, camera installations, additional lighting, increased staff resources to carry all of this out. This also includes interim measures to accommodate a temporary cricket field. Staff are also recommending that the already council-supported recreation projects of a splash pad and tennis courts be included in the 2021 and 2022 budgets. In addition to the 2% capital levy that is already being collected through the budget process, staff are currently reviewing through the development charges, soft services such as parks, recreation, and library, in consultation with the town planner and Hempson. These soft services are no longer going to be included in the CBC legislation. So we are now recommending, or will be, recommending that the DC service area of indoor recreation be combined with Parks and Recreation to fulfill the funding gap that will ultimately exist in order to complete these two major projects over the next 2 years. We're not anticipating that either of them will be up and running in 2021, but we will definitely be starting them. The Fiddle Park Master Plan that was deferred in 2020 will take place in 2021 and will now be combined with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which will review other parks and recreation infrastructure that have been identified as needed or wanted, and will provide for community consultation related to potential locations for this infrastructure, and will include things such as dog parks, permanent cricket facilities, etc. In relation to this, the CIO will also be bringing a future report to council with respect to council's strategic priorities as it relates to third-party recreational services, for example, the CDRC, and how to incorporate that as part of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. With respect to emergency services, council established a 2.88% levy in 2020 to provide for annual debt payment for a building renovation. Staff will be utilizing this levy to pay for severance-related costs in relation to borrowing that may be required depending the outcome of the Shelburne Police Services contract and severance negotiations. The term of that borrowing is hoped to not exceed 5 years. And once that loan has been paid in full, this levy will continue to be collected for future emergency service accommodations such as the fire department. Should borrowing not be required, once the negotiations are final, that amount would continue to be collected and be in place and would be placed in the emergency services accommodation reserve. So the financial impact, the average impact on a taxpayer in town is not known yet. In the past, the county and the provincial tax rates have dropped, which always offset any increase in the town's portion of the tax rate. However, due to COVID, I'm not confident that we will see a drop in the tax rates at the county or the provincial level next year, sorry. So I can't give you a figure. I know, Walter, that'll be your first question. I can't answer it yet. It's too early. We are suggesting that the overall levy increase be approximately 6%. And that's inclusive of the 2.5 and the additional 1% for the recreation as well. As I say, there's so much more information yet to come. And, with respect to grant funding and additional assessment, every day there's houses closing in Highland Village. So for each closing, that's additional supplementary assessment that we'll have for 2021. We just don't, it's a moving target and we don't know that number yet. So I have included as appendix to the budget schedule that we will circulate with all the agenda packages. And so the public is aware of the dates, and I'm not sure what a public budget meeting is going to look like for 2020, but we will figure that out and try to keep everybody engaged and informed in the budget process. And that's all I have for tonight. Denise may have some things to add to that. I'm not sure. Is there any questions?
Councilor Bernardo?
I'm going to ask the question, Carrie. How much are you allowed for the boards in our budget? Because the boards may come up with higher numbers. I know the conservation they kept it fairly low. I've seen their budget already. It's not really, the impact of the town is not that bad, but for other boards.
For library?
ERC, library, fire.
Yes. So for library, I added 2%, and for fire and the arena, I added 5%. I've not seen budgets from any of them yet.
No, that's what I was asking, because I haven't seen the budget from the fire. Now it's prepared. We're supposed to have a meeting on the budget within the next week too. So I just want to know what percentage we're playing with when we go in there.
That's what I have in there at the moment. And part of the funding that we received, the Safe Restart funding, each municipality received that grant funding. And I'm hoping that everyone will keep the boards in mind when they decide how that funding is going to be apportioned, because I'm afraid of what the CDRC budget is going to look like next year. Their revenues have been hit seriously, and that's going to continue into 2021. And their budget may need some of that funding.
I was just going to ask our two reps on the CDRC, where are things at in terms of your budget process? Lindsay or Steve?
Yeah, we haven't really discussed budget yet, to be honest. We were a little bit more focused with sort of trying to generate some revenue over the summer with the pool. And, we lost our camp programs as well over the summer. And our last meeting was basically discussing sort of, getting the ice in and the user groups and what that's going to look like and the protocols regarding that. So, yeah, I think they're just a little overwhelmed right now. So we haven't even really, brought the budget yet to the forefront. So I don't know if Steve I missed the meeting, I think, prior. So I didn't, I don't know if they spoke about it there, but I'll let Steve step in and see if he has anything to add.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. I think Carrie, you I think nailed the nail on the head. There are significant losses that they've incurred. Randy is the sort of finance guy that's sort of advising the board and crunching the numbers for us. And the reality is, to your point, there's really no sort of idea as to when they're going to and how they're going to recover from the losses that they sustained. So I could only imagine that they're going to be looking to recoup something, and that the budget is going to be something that you're probably anticipating. What that actually looks like by numbers being carved out, as Councilor Wagner says, that hasn't been done as of yet. But certainly the projections that have been provided to this point do demonstrate, I think, the obvious, which is that there is a hit not only for this year, but they're forecasting that's going to continue to 2021, because really don't see any way of recouping that lost money.
Okay. What was the increase?
Sorry, I was just going to mention, I do think Kim is applying to some grants, but we haven't heard too much of where that's going just yet.
So the average kind of annual increase for CDRC, Carrie, has it been like 2-3% the last couple of years?
Second, I can tell you.
I think last year, wasn't it like 7% or it was some higher number? I think I don't know why I'm recalling that number was higher than 2% last year.
Never very low. Not 2% ever.
Yeah, when I compare budget to budget, or my budgeted amount actually went down, so it couldn't have been that high of an increase.
Okay.
So I have 5 in there for now.
Yeah.
I did look at their budget, and 60% of their revenue is from user fees and rentals, and 40% is from the municipalities. So I can see that ratio changing.
Is there not their expenses be a little less as well, though? If the user groups, and I mean, it's more maintenance of the arena rather than, you're not running things that you don't need to run, like for the ice surface.
Yeah, to Councilor Bernardo's point, some of that has gone down, of course, but again, where they derive a lot of their revenue from, obviously it has been impacted by COVID. So despite the fact that there are some savings in certain areas, the losses have still mounted. And to Councilor Wagner's point, obviously they're trying their best to see where they could get funds to sort of assist them along the way. But I would anticipate whatever the budget was last year that they submitted, that it's going to be higher this time around.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, Carrie, sorry.
And that's the same with our budget as well. When I'm going through it and comparing actuals, our expenses are down in quite a few areas, which does offset the reduced revenue as well. So there is a little bit of, equalization there, but recreation, and it was hit harder.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think for the purposes of tonight, the framework is just that. It's a framework, and it allows us to move forward in some sort of organized fashion with, some direction targeted to our priorities. So is everybody generally comfortable with the framework that the treasurer's laid out? I mean, there'll be lots of time over the next couple of months to fine tune that, but I think it provides a pretty solid foundation to start from. Okay. All right. Well, look for a mover and seconder then to adopt the framework as presented, which includes the 6 or an overall levy increase not to exceed 6%, which includes a 1% operating levy for Parks and Rec, as well as a 2.5% levy increase to support human resources and staffing. Moved by Councillor Fegan, second by Councillor Bernardo. Any additional discussion on that? All in favor? Carried. All right. Okay, back to item number 6. So it's a bylaw for consideration dealing with the integrated maintenance and operations services. This is an annual contract that we sign, isn't it, Denise? Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any questions dealing with that? Or Jim, do you want to speak to it at all?
Through your worship, it is an annual agreement that we sign with MTO just for the plowing of Main Street, all of the connecting link, actually, Main Street and Owen Sound.
Okay. All right, so look for a mover and seconder for the reading and enacting of bylaw number 47-2020. Councillor Hall, second by Councillor Bernardo. All in favor? Carried.
Can we have a break? I mean, it's almost 10 o'clock and we've been at it for quite a while.
Need a quick break?
We got to sit past them. We're going to have to make a motion anyway.
I'm fine with that. I could use a quick washroom break myself. So let's try to keep it quick though, 5 minutes, and let's stick to it. Okay.